The year was 2461. Above the blue-white swirl of a protected Earth, Eos Station hung like a trinity of silver rings, a monument to a fragile peace. It was the hub of the Tri-Alliance, the precise, neutral point where humanity, the arboreal Cathari, and the crystalline Darun agreed not to kill each other. Today, that neutrality was being expressed in the form of lukewarm champagne and microscopic appetizers. The event was a charity gala for the Zen Sapiens Nursery, held in the station's grand observation atrium. It was a place designed to inspire awe, with a curved wall of transparent steel showing Earth turning majestically below, a constant, silent reminder of what they were all supposed to be protecting. The rest of the atrium was a sterile, opulent white, softened by cascading hydroponic plants that smelled vaguely of ozone and fertilizer. Adrian Cole hated these events. He felt like a wrench dropped into a high-precision clockwork. He was, in fact, a man who dealt with wrenches, or at least their modern, plasma-wielding equivalents. Adrian was a senior maintenance engineer for EOS, which meant he fixed everything from atmospheric scrubbers to the station's gravity spin alignment. But his official title, the one that got him into places like this, was Data Archivist, third class. It was a dual role nobody else wanted, maintaining the physical integrity of the Alliance's central data core, a job that was 90% server calibration and 10% glorified librarian. He stood near the back, by a humming refreshment dispenser he had personally repaired just that morning. He was a man of medium height, with a face that had settled into lines of quiet resignation long before it should have. His dark hair was threaded with gray, and his eyes, though sharp, held the persistent weariness of a widower. His wife, Alara, had been gone 5 years. The gala's polite chatter was a white noise that did nothing to fill the silence she had left. "Pip." "Quiet mode," Adrian murmured. A small, battered metallic orb, roughly the size of a grapefruit, hovered at his left shoulder. This was Pip, a last-generation utility drone, technically obsolete and probably in violation of station protocol. Pip's single blue optic dimmed in reluctant compliance. "Acknowledged," the drone whispered in a voice far too chipper for its appearance. Stealth and observe protocol engaged. Though I must note, the Cathari ambassador's lower mandible is twitching at a frequency indicative of high-level irritation. "Fascinating." "Fascinating," Adrian agreed, dryly, sipping his water. He adjusted the collar of his formal gray maintenance uniform, the closest thing he had to party wear. Underneath the pressed fabric, covering his sternum, was a secret, an intricate tattoo, a web of interlocking geometric lines inked in a pigment that was not quite black. He never spoke of it. It was a relic from a life before Alara, before Eos, a mistake of his youth he could not wash away. He was mentally cataloging the microfractures in the atrium support struts when the atmosphere changed. It was not a physical change, not a pressure drop. It was a shift in power. The polite, self-important noise of the gala simply stopped. The main doors hissed open, not with the polite deference for a late-arriving politician, but with the stark, booming finality of an edict. 2 Cathari Imperial Guards, 7 feet tall and clad in living, bark-like armor that shifted with their breath, stepped through. They carried no visible weapons, which was somehow more terrifying than if they had been armed to the teeth. Between them walked the Empress, not an ambassador, not a high-ranking general. Her Imperial Majesty, Salith of the Cathari, First Eon, root of the World Tree. She was a being of staggering, terrifying grace. Cathari were humanoid, but their skin was a smooth, photosynthetic green, and their hair was a cascade of fine, moss-like fibers. Salith, however, was pale, almost white, as if carved from ancient, pearlescent wood. Her eyes were deep pools of liquid gold, and she wore a simple, flowing robe that seemed woven from moonlight and leaves. The station commander, a human admiral named Thorn, visibly paled. "Your Majesty, we were not expecting you. Eos is honored." Salith's gaze did not fall on him. It swept the room, cold and analytical, as if she were inspecting a flawed piece of machinery. Her voice, when she spoke, was not loud, but it cut through the silence and resonated in their bones. "This is the nursery?" she stated. It was not a question. "The charity display?" "Yes, Your Majesty." Thorn stammered. "A fine cause, the—" "I am not here for your cause," she interrupted, without malice. It was a simple fact. "I am here to inspect the special subject. Bring it to me." The nursery administrator, a flustered woman named Elms, stepped forward. "Special subject. Your Majesty, all our charges are special. Of course, we have a promising Darun polyform and a very bright human Cathari hybrid." The Empress's golden eyes snapped to her. "Subject 734, the anomaly, the one you keep hidden." Now. A cold dread settled over the room. The special subject was a source of shame for the nursery. A diplomatic black eye. It was a Cathari infant, but one born catastrophically wrong. They were ushered away from the main floor, through a sterile white corridor, to a bio-contained observation room. There, in a small, pressurized incubator, lay the child. Its name was Nyx. It was, by any standard, a monster. Cathari were known for their symmetry, their arboreal beauty. Nyx was a chaotic mess of biology. Her skin was a mottled, unhealthy gray-green, the scales asymmetrical and flaking. One eye was the brilliant gold of her species. The other was a milky, oversized blue orb that stared listlessly at the ceiling. She had the requisite 4 limbs, but also a 5th, vestigial limb sprouting awkwardly from her left shoulder blade, ending in 2 tiny, twitching digits. A line of prospective adoptive parents, a curated list of the galaxy's wealthiest and most powerful couples, stood before the glass. They were human, Darun, and even high-caste Cathari, one by one, as they had done all week. They looked upon the child and found their reasons. "The genetic markers are just not compatible with our family line," a human banker whispered, adjusting his silk suit. "The chi flow is blocked," a Darun emissary chimed, his crystalline form vibrating with distaste. "A defective specimen. It is unfortunate," a Cathari noble said, his face a mask of rigid disgust. Adrian had followed, drawn by the same morbid curiosity as everyone else. He stood at the very back, near a maintenance panel, Pip hovering silently by his ear. He watched the parade of rejection, and for the first time in 5 years, he felt an emotion sharper than grief. It was anger. It was a tiny, malformed baby, and these titans of the universe were treating it like spoiled milk. Empress Salith watched the candidates. Her face was serene, but her golden eyes were burning. She let the last Cathari noble finish his platitude-laden refusal. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Salith turned. Her gaze swept past the politicians, past the admirals, past the billionaires. It moved over the guards, the doctors, and the administrators, until it landed, with impossible, terrifying precision, on the quiet maintenance man standing by the wall. Adrian Cole froze. He felt the weight of that gaze like a physical pressure, a pinning beam. The Empress raised one long, elegant, pale green finger and pointed directly at him. "You," she said. Her voice was not a request. It was a command that echoed with the weight of a 1,000-year-old dynasty. You will be the guardian. Adrian's first thought was that he had definitely, finally, gone insane. His second thought, following quickly, was that she was pointing at the person behind him. He glanced over his shoulder. There was no one but a bulkhead and a fire suppression unit. He pointed to his chest. Me. His voice was a dry croak. Him! Admiral Thorne sputtered, his face turning a fascinating shade of plum. Your Majesty, that is Adrian Cole. He's a maintenance engineer, a librarian. I am aware of his designation, Salith said, her eyes never leaving Adrian's. He will suffice. Step forward. Adrian felt his legs move, as if pulled by strings. He walked past the stunned, horrified faces of the galaxy's elite. He stopped a respectful 5 feet from the Empress. He was intensely aware of the hum of the incubator, the slight whiff of ozone from her guards. Your Majesty, Adrian managed. I think there's been a mistake. I'm just fixing things. I file data. I am not Guardian material. You are human, she said, as if that explained everything. You are not burdened by the pretense of genetic purity. You do not see a defect. You see a problem to be fixed, and you are empty. The last word hit him like a physical blow. He thought of Alara's empty side of the bed, the empty chair at his small table. He went in Yiked. Your cup is empty, Salith clarified, her voice softening by a microscopic degree. It can be filled. The others are full of their own importance. Before Adrian could formulate a response, the room's doors slammed open. This time, it was not imperial grace. It was military precision and corporate arrogance. 2 groups entered. The first was led by General Chiron, a towering, grizzled Cathari warrior whose face looked like it had been carved from petrified wood. His bark armor was a deep, menacing mahogany, and his golden eyes burned with a zealot's fire. He was the leader of the Cathari hardliners, the Pure Root faction. Your Majesty, Chiron boomed, his voice a gravelly roar. This farce ends now. The child is a genetic failure. It is an aberration, unfit for the Gen Crown, unfit for succession. It must be, he hesitated, recycled, for the purity of the bloodline. Adrian felt his stomach clench. Recycled. Before Salith could respond, the second group's leader stepped forward. He was a human, unlike Chiron in every way. He was small, precise, and wore an impeccably tailored suit of matte black. He smiled, but it did not reach his cold gray eyes. This was Director Valerius, a high-level executive from the Obelisk Directorate. Obelisk was the largest, most secretive, and most ruthless corporation in the Alliance, specializing in xenobiotech and, it was rumored, biological weapons. General Empress, Valerius said, his voice a smooth, synthetic purr. Let us not be hasty. Recycled is such an inefficient term. The Directorate is prepared to take this specimen off your hands. We will classify it as a biological artifact, a tangibly asset for research. We will, of course, compensate the nursery for its trouble. He made a small motion, and 2 Obelisk security troopers, armed with stun batons and biotagging kits, moved toward the incubator. Stop, Adrian said. The word was quiet, but it cut through the posturing of the general and the director. Everyone stared at him. Adrian himself seemed surprised he had spoken. This is a child, Adrian said, his voice gaining a small measure of strength. Not an asset, not a failure. It's a baby. You do not tag a baby. Valerius's smile tightened. Mr. Cole, is it the librarian? Stick to your data slates. This is not your concern. The Empress. Admiral Thorne inserted himself, trying to regain control. has just designated Mr. Cole as the child's guardian. This is a diplomatic matter. Chiron laughed. A harsh sound like grinding stones. A human, a broken, low-caste human, guarding a Cathari. This is an insult to the throne. I am the throne, Salith's voice cracked like a whip of ice. And you, General, forget your place. The child inside the incubator, agitated by the shouting, began to cry. It was not a human cry. It was a high-frequency wail that scraped at the nerves. A sound of pure, unadulterated terror. She's in distress. A new voice, sharp and commanding. A woman pushed through the crowd. Past the obelisk troopers. She wore the blue and white uniform of EOS Medical. All of you, back off. You're terrifying her. She was Dr. Mira Sato, the station's chief xenobiologist. She had dark, intelligent eyes and hair pulled back in a severe, functional bun. She ignored the Empress, the General, and the Director, tapping commands into the incubator's control panel. The wailing softened as a mild sedative misted into the chamber. Her vitals are spiking, Dr. Sato reported to the room at large. Whatever you're planning, do it quietly, or she'll go into cardiac arrest. She worked for another moment, then looked up. Her eyes met Adrian's. It was a brief, shared glance of sanity. In a room gone mad, she saw him. A simple man in a maintenance uniform, standing his ground against two of the most powerful factions in the quadrant. A flicker of something respect-interest passed between them before she returned to her patient. Nyx had quieted, but her small, malformed body was trembling. Her one good hand, the tiny, gray-green one, pressed against the glass of the incubator. She was looking at Adrian. No, not at him. Through him. Adrian felt a sudden, intense heat in his chest. It was not a burn. It was a humming, a vibration, a resonance. It pulsed in perfect time with the thrumming of the incubator. He looked down instinctively. Through the gray fabric of his uniform, a faint, deep blue light was glowing. His tattoo. Before he could react, the air between him and the incubator tore. It was the only word for it. A shimmering, invisible field suddenly became visible. A complex, three-dimensional latticework of brilliant blue energy flared into existence, connecting the center of Adrian's chest to the tiny, trembling child. The pattern was intricate, geometric, and ancient. It filled the room with a light that seemed to come from outside the known spectrum. Pip, his drone, zipped forward, its optic wide. Warning: unidentified energy field detected. Corresponds to no known alliance signature. Origin query: origin appears to be user Cole, Adrian. And user Nyx, recommending immediate diagnostics and perhaps sunglasses. The light held for 3 impossible seconds, illuminating the shocked faces of the General, the Director, and the Empress. Chiron and Valerius looked horrified. Empress Salith looked satisfied. The pattern vanished as quickly as it had come, leaving spots in everyone's vision. A heavy, ozone-filled silence descended. Adrian was breathing heavily, his hand pressed to his chest. He could feel the tattoo, the skin beneath it tingling as if it had just been freshly inked. "What in God's name? The crown lattice," Salith whispered, her voice full of an ancient, unreadable emotion. "It still answers." She turned, her face a mask of imperial resolve. "General Chiron, your concern for the bloodline is noted. Director Valerius, your offer is declined. The child is not an asset. She is a ward of the Cathari Empire." She strode to a nearby comm panel and retrieved a data slate. With a stylus, she began to write, her movements fast and precise. "Admiral Thorne," she said. "You will witness this." She finished, and pressed her thumb to the slate. searing the document with her imperial seal. An edict, effective immediately. By the power of the first Aeon, I, Saleth, affirm the bond, the child. Nyx is placed under the full and binding protection of this human, Adrian Cole, who is hereby granted the title of Imperial Guardian Tempus. He and the child are extensions of my person. They are granted full diplomatic immunity under Edict 749. An attack on them is an attack on the Cathari throne. She handed the slate to the stunned admiral. See to it. Chiron was purple with rage. Majesty, this is obscene. A human, a non-believer guarding a potential. Silence, General, Saleth commanded. The lattice has spoken. The matter is closed. She turned to Adrian. Guardian Cole, your charge awaits. Dr. Sato, her face pale but her hands steady, was already keying the incubator for transport. She needs a full-spectrum stabilizer and a sterile environment. My lab, now. Adrian just nodded, his mind numb. He, a man who could not even keep a houseplant alive after his wife died, was now the guardian of a deformed alien baby, the owner of a magical glowing tattoo, and the center of an interstellar incident that was, by all estimations, about to go very, very badly. A human holding a child of the Empire. The scandal wasn't just born, it was screaming. As he and Dr. Sato guided the transport incubator out of the room, flanked by the Empress's impassive guards, Adrian saw Chiron and Valerius huddled together. Their expressions were murderous. The atrium was cleared, the gala was over. Within 2 hours, 2 things arrived simultaneously at Adrian's modest quarters in the station's maintenance sector. The first was an official, gold-embossed summons to appear before the Tri-Alliance Hybrid Court in 3 days' time, to clarify the legal and biological standing of the entity known as Nyx. The second was a discreet, encrypted message that Pip, his drone, intercepted from a darknet relay. It was a bounty alert, flagged by the Obelisk Directorate's internal security code. Target Cathari anomaly, designation Nyx, acquisition intact, living, payment 5 million Alliance credits, dead drop on EOS. All inquiries to Directorate Liaison, discretion assured. Adrian looked at the tiny, sleeping, malformed child in the medical stasis crib that now dominated his small living room. He looked at the legal summons in one hand and the illegal bounty on his datapad in the other. Well, Pip, Adrian said, rubbing the back of his neck. A deep, familiar ache starting there. This complicates my maintenance schedules. Indeed, sir, Pip chirped, its blue light flashing. My projections indicate a 94% chance that your life is about to become significantly more interesting. And significantly shorter. Adrian sighed, a long, weary sound. He looked at the child, Nyx. Her vestigial limb twitched in her sleep. He felt the phantom warmth on his chest, a reminder of the impossible light. He was empty, the Empress had said. He was a broken man with nothing to lose. He had been wrong. As of today, he had something to lose. Pip, he said, his voice quiet, but hard. Run a full diagnostic on the apartment security seals. Everything. And find me everything you can on General Chiron, Director Valerius, and something called the Crown Lattice. At once, Guardian Cole, Pip replied. The drone's voice was still chipper, but for the first time, Adrian thought he heard a note of something else. Something human. Respect. Life. Adrian Cole decided, had become a surrealist painting. He was the bewildered man in the foreground, holding a fish that was also a telephone. His apartment. Once a quiet sanctuary of gray bulkheads and sparse, functional furniture, was now a high-tech, biohazardous nursery. The centerpiece was the medical-grade stasis crib Dr. Sato had requisitioned. It took up a full quarter of his living space and hummed with a low, anxious energy. "Pip, what is the moon phase rhythm for a Cathari infant?" Adrian asked, rubbing his eyes. It was, according to the station's synthesized day-night cycle, 3 o'clock in the morning. He had been guardian for 2 days. He had not slept for 2 days. Accessing, Pip's chipper voice replied. The drone was hovering over the crib, projecting a soft, golden light. Cathari newborns, particularly those of high dynastic lineage, require a sleep cycle calibrated to the tidal locks of their homeworld, Kether Prime. This involves a 93-minute cycle of absolute darkness, followed by a 17-minute period of simulated low moon light and a 5-minute burst of high moon luminance. Failure to comply may cause spontaneous bioluminescent shedding. It sounds messy. It is messy, Adrian grunted, pointing to a small, glowing patch on his own shirt. She did it an hour ago. He peered into the crib. Nyx was awake. Her mismatched eyes, one brilliant gold, one milky blue, followed his every movement. She was quiet, her tiny, malformed body wrapped in a thermal foil blanket. "All right," Adrian said, picking up a small, pressurized canister. "Feeding time." This was the next hurdle. Cathari infants did not drink milk. They absorbed a nutrient-dense microalgae paste. The paste had to be administered at a precise temperature that was, according to the manual, lukewarm, but with the memory of coolness. "I still do not understand that instruction," Adrian muttered as he applied a small dab of the gray-green sludge to Nyx's mouth. She turned her head away, her tiny, 5-limbed body tensing. "Sir, the manual suggests a traditional Cathari feeding song," Pip offered helpfully. "I have several thousand examples in my database. Would you like a warrior's lament or a spring planting hymn? Pip, if you sing, I will donate you to a recycling unit." Adrian warned. "Just hold the light steady." He tried again, this time humming a tune. It was not a Cathari hymn. It was an old, half-remembered earth lullaby Alara used to hum while she worked. It was simple, low, and wordless. Nyx's body untensed. Her strange blue eyes focused on him. Slowly, tentatively. She opened her mouth and accepted the paste. Adrian let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. He continued to hum, his voice rough with disuse and fatigue, as he fed the tiny, monstrous alien who had turned his life inside out. The final challenge was the garment for the auxiliary limb. Dr. Sato had insisted the vestigial arm be kept in a sterile, supportive sling to prevent chafing and infection. It was a microscopic, 5-looped piece of biofabric that seemed to have been designed by a spider with a cruel sense of humor. It took him 20 minutes. By the end, he was sweating. Nyx was fussy, and Pip had offered to incinerate the garment and synthesize a simpler, more logical one piece at least 4 times. "There," Adrian said, finally securing the last loop. "See interstellar diaper duty? We're a team," Nyx gurgled, a sound like tiny, popping bubbles. She raised her primary hand and her auxiliary hand, the 5-limbed one, and seemed to wave them in vague, uncoordinated unison. A small, weary smile touched Adrian's face. "Yeah, you and me. Kid." Later, that morning, a very tired Adrian Cole carried a portable, secured version of the crib into Dr. Mira Sato's laboratory. Her lab was the opposite of his apartment. It was blinding white, impeccably organized, and smelled of ozone and antiseptic. Mira looked as tired as he felt, but her dark eyes were bright, with a fierce, scientific energy. "Thank you for coming. Guardian Cole. Adrian, please, he said. If I'm going to be her guardian, I'd rather not sound like a character from a fantasy sim. And you're Mira, not Doctor, right? A small smile ghosted across her lips. Mira it is. Good. I have something to show you. Something you need to see. She led him to a diagnostic wall. I've been running passive tests on her. Vitals, blood work, the usual. Her immune system is a mess. A mess? How? It's chaotic, Mira said, pulling up a wildly fluctuating graph. It's simultaneously overreacting and underperforming. 1 minute it's attacking its own cells, the next it's completely dormant. I've never seen anything like it. It's not a genetic defect. Adrian, it's like a high-performance engine running on contaminated fuel. It's tearing itself apart. Can you fix it? Adrian asked, his voice low. I can't just fix it because it is not, technically, broken, Mira said, frustration in her voice. It's waiting for a signal, a key. Look at this. She pointed to another monitor. This is a gala entry. The moment that thing happened, between you and Nyx, he watched the footage. He saw the light, the crown lattice of flare between them. On a separate screen, Mira had isolated Nyx's vitals from that exact moment. Look, she breathed. For those 3 seconds, her immune system stabilized. Completely. Every marker, every T-cell, every enzyme is perfect. Balanced harmony. The light faded, and the graph immediately returned to its chaotic, destructive scribble. The Empress called it the crown lattice, Adrian said. What is it? I've been cross-referencing everything I can find, Mira said. It's deep, deep Cathari lore. Not just lore, almost mythology. They say it's the operating system of their entire species. A bioenergetic field that connects the royal line, the homeworld, and their biology. Nyx needs that frequency to live. And somehow you activated it. Adrian stared at his own chest, at the place where the tattoo lay hidden. But I cannot just do that. It just happened. I know, Mira said, which is why we have a problem. But that's not all I wanted to show you. She led him to a small, protected alcove. Nyx was inside, awake and floating in a zero-G sensory field. I was running a basic cognitive test, Mira explained. Standard Zen infant protocol. We use light puzzles. Easy call and response. The light flashes blue. The infant is supposed to touch the blue panel. Very simple. Watch. Mira activated the console. A panel inside the alcove lit up blue. Nyx, floating, looked at it. She did nothing. See, Mira said. No response to the basic before she could finish. Nyx's tiny, 5-limbed auxiliary hand shot out. It did not touch the blue panel. Instead, it tapped a sequence on the wall, red, yellow, blue, red, green. What did she just do? Adrian asked. Mira's face was pale. That was not the test. That was the solution to advanced cognitive order, the one for mature, sentient species. I do not even have it loaded in the program. She's smart, Adrian said, stating the obvious. She's not smart. Adrian, Mira said, her voice trembling with awe. She's beyond me. She solved a puzzle that was not even presented, using a logic that it is like she's operating on a level we do not even have a name for yet. The implications of it, a child with a supercomputer for a brain and an immune system on a hair trigger settled heavily in the room. Leaving Mira's lab, Adrian felt the weight of the universe pressing down on him. He had a super-intelligent, biologically unstable alien baby who was the key to an ancient, mythical power. And he was a guy who unclogged data pipes. He was so lost in thought that he did not notice the crowd until he was in the middle of it. He had walked out into one of Eos's main concourses. A swarm of reporters, humans, Cathari, and Darun descended on him. Floating media drones, their red recording lights, like angry insect eyes, formed a hemisphere around him. Guardian Cole, is it true the Empress has granted human custody of a high-blood Cathari? Mr. Cole, what qualifications do you possess to raise a xenochild? Do you even have children? That last one was a knife twist. My wife and I. No, he managed. A sharp-faced human woman in a corporate news network suit thrust a mic in his face. Then why you a maintenance engineer, a third-class librarian? What did you do to convince the Empress? Adrian looked into the blinding lights. He felt the familiar, cold panic rising in his throat. He wanted to run, hide, return to his quiet, gray life. But then he thought of Nyx. He thought of her tiny, five-limbed hand solving a puzzle no one had given her. He thought of her mismatched eyes, watching him. He took a breath. The panic receded, instead, cold. Simple clarity. I did not do anything, Adrian said, his voice quiet but carrying in the sudden lull. And I did not ask for this. I am not a politician. I am not a noble. I am not a guardian. Then what are you? The reporter snapped. Adrian looked her right in the eye. I'm the man who was in the room when a child needed help, and everyone else was busy talking about assets and bloodlines. I do not have qualifications. I have a small apartment, a medical crib I am still learning how to use, and a baby that needs to be fed every 3 hours. The Empress gave me a title. I am just doing the job. He pushed, gently, but firmly, through the stunned media line. The title does not make the man, ma'am, he said over his shoulder. The job does. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go buy microalgae. He left them standing there, speechless. He did not see the figure that stepped out from a nearby alcove, a being who had watched the entire exchange. A dear Incole. The voice was a series of harmonious, crystalline chimes. It was Ambassador Tariq Ibn Nur, a Darun. The Darun were beings of living, silicon-based crystal. Tariq's body was a tall, multifaceted spire of amethyst and quartz. His face, a shifting pattern of internal, soft lights. Ambassador, Adrian said, bracing himself for more politics. That was well-handed, Tariq chimed. The lights in his face swirled with what Adrian was beginning to recognize as amusement. You have, as you humans say, put the cat amongst the pigeons. I'm just trying to keep my head down. Ambassador, you lost that privilege when an Empress pointed at you, Tariq replied. I am the chief counsel for the Tri-Alliance Hybrid Court. I am overseeing your case. My case. Adrian sighed. What do they want? General Chiron has filed a petition of genetic reclamation, claiming Nyx is a ward of the Cathari military, not the throne. Director Valerius has filed a petition of biological salvage, claiming she is a non-sentient artifact and thus property of his corporation. Adrian's hands clenched. She is not property. I am inclined to agree, Tariq chimed, which is why I am here. Your summons. The hybrid court is not just a challenge, Adrian Cole. It is an opportunity. The current law is murky, vague, built on prejudice. There is no legal precedent for multi-species adoption, especially not this. The ambassador's light patterns became slow, serious. Salith has given you a shield diplomatic immunity, but it is a temporary one. The court can overrule it. But if we can prove that you are a suitable and GARNISHED guardian, if we can prove that your bond is in the child's best biosocial interest, then what? Then you do not just save her. Tarek said. You set a precedent. You write a new law. A law that says family is not defined by blood or by species, but by action, by work, as you so eloquently put it. You could open the door for thousands of hybrid children, thousands of orphans left behind by our wars. Adrian stared at the crystal being. The weight on his shoulders just increased 1,000-fold. Do you think I can do that, me, a librarian? I think, Tarek chimed, his lights warm, that the librarian is the only one who can. The court convenes in 2 days. We have much to do. Bring your drone and come to my office. We must prepare your qualifications. That night, Adrian's apartment felt less like a nursery and more like a fortress. He had spent hours with Tarek, going over legal statutes until his eyes burned. He was back. Nix was asleep in her crib, and Pip was running silent, low-level security sweeps. This is madness, Adrian said to the quiet room. I'm preparing for a custody battle against a general and a mega-corporation. For a child I met 3 days ago. He sat in his chair, the one Alara had always called the thinking chair. He felt the old, familiar grief wash over him. Alara. What would she have made of all this? She, the pragmatist, the engineer who saw the universe as a series of problems to be solved? She would have laughed. And then she would have built a better insulated crib and hacked the Cathari database for feeding songs. The thought of her, so sharp and clear, was a physical pain. He missed her. He missed his old, empty, quiet life. The apartment's main lock hissed. Adrian froze. He had not ordered anything. The doorcam was dark. Pip, he whispered. Intruder. Silent alert. Already active, sir, Pip's voice whispered back, its blue optic now a hard, warning red. 3 individuals, biosignatures masked. They have bypassed the primary lock. Adrian moved, his heart hammering. He did not run to the door. He ran to the crib. He grabbed a heavy-duty plasma cutter from his maintenance kit, a tool, not a weapon, but it was heavy and metal. The door to his apartment slid open. 3 figures in matte black, full-body armor entered. They moved with a terrifying, liquid grace. No Cathari military. This was Obelisk. Corporate mercs. They fanned out, their helmeted visors sweeping the room. They held weapons, but not pulse rifles. They were compact, pistol-like devices with long, needle-like barrels, biostun. Target is in the stasis crib, one of them hissed, his voice a synthesized rasp. Tag it. Neutralize the civilians. The one on the left raised his weapon. Adrian raised the plasma cutter. It was a pathetic defense. I do not think so, Adrian said, his voice shaking. Sir, Pip suddenly zipped from its charging port. My analysis of Cathari infant care protocols indicates the environment is unsanitary. The presence of unregistered biomass is unacceptable. Pip, now is not the time, Adrian yelled. Engaging emergency sanitation protocol. Level 10, Pip declared. The mercs paused, confused by the chirping drone. That pause was all Pip needed. A high-pressure nozzle extended from Pip's chassis, with a sound like a giant sneeze. The drone unleashed a massive, billowing cloud of white powder. It was high-density, electrostatically charged industrial cleaning powder, the kind Adrian used to scrub plasma conduits. The cloud filled the room instantly, a blinding, choking blizzard of white. What is this? One merc choked. My visor I cannot see. It's on the floor. I am. The mercs, trained for zero-G combat, chemical warfare, and armed incursion, had no protocol for a floor suddenly covered in a micrometer-thin layer of hyper-slick, frictionless powder. The first merc, the one who had been aiming at Adrian, took a step. His foot shot out from under him. He flailed, his arms windmilling, and crashed backwards into the second merc. They both went down in a tangle of limbs and curses. The third merc, seeing his comrades fall, tried to brace himself. He slipped, skidded backward, and slammed his helmet hard into the bulkhead. He slumped to the floor, unconscious. Adrian, who had been bracing for a plasma blast, stared in disbelief. "Sanitation complete," Pip announced proudly from the ceiling, where it had taken refuge. "There may be some residual particulates." The two conscious mercs were trying to get up, their high-traction combat boots rendered useless. They were like newborn animals on ice. "Get the package," one roared, crawling on his hands and knees toward the crib. Adrian ran, not at the merc, but at the wall panel. He slammed the station-wide security alert. "Security intrusion level 4. My apartment now." Red lights flashed. Sirens blared. The merc on his knees cursed, raised his biostunner, and fired at Adrian. Adrian dove. The needle-like dart hissed past his ear and embedded itself in the wall. The merc scrambled to his feet, used the crib to steady himself, and aimed again, this time at Nix. Adrian roared, tackling the man's legs. They both went down. The merc, armored and strong, slammed his elbow into Adrian's jaw. Stars exploded behind Adrian's eyes. The merc rolled on top of him, bringing the needle gun down to point-blank range. The door hissed open again. "What in God's name is it?" It was Mira. She had seen the alert from her lab down the hall. She froze, taking in the scene, the white-powdered room, the unconscious merc, and Adrian on the floor with a gun to his head. The merc hesitated, distracted by the new arrival. It was all the opening Adrian needed. He was no soldier, but he was an engineer. He knew leverage. He grabbed the merc's wrist, jammed his other thumb into the joint lock of the armor's elbow, and twisted. The merc screamed as the armor's joint gave way with a crack of synth fiber. The gun clattered to the floor. Footsteps, heavy, running. EOS security. The merc on the floor kicked Adrian in the ribs, scrambled to his feet, grabbed his still groggy partner, and dove out the still open door, disappearing just as two armed security officers arrived. The apartment was a wreck. White powder covered everything. One merc was unconscious and zip-tied. Mira was kneeling by the crib, her hands protected by a sterile field, scanning Nix. "She's fine," Mira breathed, her voice shaking. "Terrified, but fine." "You, Adrian, your face." Adrian touched his jaw. It was already swelling. "I'm fine." He looked at the dart still stuck in his wall. "This was Obelisk. He was here for her." Mira's eyes were wide. She was looking at his chest. His shirt had been ripped in combat. "Adrian," she whispered, pointing. "Your tattoo." He looked down. The intricate, geometric tattoo on his sternum was exposed. It was dark, a web of ancient-looking lines. "What about it?" he said, his voice rough. Mira did not answer. She pulled her datapad from her lab coat. Her fingers flew, pulling up an image. It was a still she must have taken from the gala's security footage, a capture of the crown lattice as it had flared between him and Nix. With a few keystrokes, she overlaid the image on him. The lines of the glowing crown lattice, the bioenergetic field, were not random. They were a perfect one-to-one extension of the lines inked on his skin. "It's a map," Adrian breathed. "It's more than a map," Mira said, her eyes wide with a terrifying, brilliant realization. She pulled up another file. It was an archaeological scan of a Cathari First Dynasty glyphstone. The text was archaic, but the central image was unmistakable. It was his tattoo. "I've been researching," Mira said, her voice a low, intense whisper. "The crown lattice. The Cathari historians call it the Song of the World Tree. But the earliest texts, the pre-Empire scrolls, call it something else. They say only a king can activate not it, but by a custodian, a key holder, a line of guardians charged with protecting the lattice. She looked from the ancient glyph to the ink on his skin, to the wonder child in the crib, and back to the quiet maintenance man. "Adrian," she said, her voice shaking, "I do not know what you are, but you are not just a librarian." Later. Much later. Safety was gone, Sho. The unconscious Merc was gone. The powder was mostly gone. Mira had finally left, taking the obelisk Stundart with her for analysis, her mind clearly racing. Nyx was asleep. Pip was in its charging port, a small dent in its casing from where a stray boot had kicked it. Adrian sat in the thinking chair. The apartment was quiet again, but it was not the empty, grieving quiet of before. It was the tense, coiled silence of a battlefield between skirmishes. He was sore. His jaw throbbed, but his mind was sharp, cold. He thought about the Merc, the armor, the biodart, obelisk. He opened his personal data slate. He navigated to a locked file, one he had not opened in 5 years. The file was labeled Ilara, Accident Report, Scaffolding Collapse, EOS 7, Obelisk Directorate, Subcontractor. The report had been sterile, official, structural failure due to unforeseen metal fatigue. A settlement had been paid. A non-disclosure agreement had been signed. It was all very clean, like the powder. It had not been unforeseen, metal fatigue. He knew it. He had been an engineer on that same project. He had filed 3 reports about that specific subcontractor, about their shoddy materials, about cutting corners. The reports had vanished. And then Ilara had vanished. Obelisk. He had let it go. He had drowned in his grief, taken the quiet librarian job, and let the silence swallow him. He had convinced himself there was nothing he could do. He looked at the dart Mira had left behind, the one that had missed him. He ran his thumb over the small, corporate logo, same scaffold report logo. This was not a new enemy. This was an old one. An old, festering wound. They had taken his wife through their greed and negligence. And now they had come into his home to steal a child, to take the one thing that had pulled him from the gray fog. They were not just trying to steal Nyx. They were not just trying to silence him. They were trying to finish the job, to take the last piece of him that was still human. A cold, dark, and utterly pure rage began to burn in his chest. It was not the hot, explosive anger of a soldier. It was the slow, patient, burning hot rage of an engineer who sees a flawed design, a system that is rotten, inefficient, and needs to be taken apart, piece by piece, until it works right. "You took my wife," he whispered to the dark, empty room. "You will not have this child. I will not let you take anything else." It was not just protection, he realized. It was not just about justice. It was about revenge. A cold, smart, and absolute revenge. Built not on violence, but on truth. He would not just stop them. He would end them. He would tear their entire, corrupt corporation down, data slate by data slate. The moment he made the vow, the tattoo on his chest, the custodian's mark, grew warm. It was a low, steady thrum, a quiet vibration he felt in his bones. "Sir!" Pip's voice startled him. The drone was hovering, its blue light soft. "What is it?" "Pip, the sensation. The one from your chest. I am detecting a corresponding signal." "What like from the gala?" "No, sir, this is new. It is not an activation. It is a response, an echo." Pip projected a 3-dimensional map of EOS Station. A single, pulsing red light appeared. "The signal is Cathari. extremely old, and encrypted with a pre-alliance signature. It originates from Sector 9. Adrian knew Sector 9. It was the decommissioned graveyard sector. Old, abandoned, used for storage. "But that's impossible," Adrian said, tracing the map. "I've run diagnostics on Sector 9. That entire block is empty space. It's just a dead-end service corridor." "According to the official station schematics, yes," Pip agreed. "But the signal is there. A hidden archive. Perhaps." The red light on the map pulsed, a steady, rhythmic beat. Adrian looked down at his chest. He could feel the tattoo pulsing in perfect time. A call and a response. "And sir," Pip added, its voice uncharacteristically hushed, "the signal is encoded with a biometric lock, the decryption key as well. It is a very complex piece of Cathari linguistic code, but it translates, roughly, to custodian. A hidden room. A signal he could only hear. A lock he could only open." "We have to go," Adrian said. It was not a question. He was standing in the wreck of his apartment, the pulsing red dot on Pip's map of Sector 9, a persistent, silent alarm. Mira was looking at him, her dark eyes wide, still processing the revelation of his tattoo. "Go where?" Mira asked, finally. "To a decommissioned storage sector based on your skin signal, Adrian. We just survived an assassination attempt. The safest place for you and Nix is in my lab, under full quarantine and guard." "They found us here," Adrian countered, his voice low and hard. "They will find us in your lab, and that signal, it's a response. Chiron and Obelisk want to stop Nix. This archive might hold the key to saving her. Mira, you said it yourself. Her immune system is failing. It needs a frequency. What if that's what is in Sector 9? The frequency." He was already moving, packing a maintenance kit with a focused, grim energy. Not just tools, power spanners, a portable plasma torch, a high-voltage diagnostic probe, and several data spikes. "Sir, may I interject?" Pip hovered near his shoulder. The drone's casing was still smudged with sanitation powder. "My analysis suggests your logic is sound. However, your probability of survival, based on one unknown custodian and one xenobiologist versus the combined forces of a Cathari general and a Class 4 corporation, is approximately, let me see, I seem to have misplaced the decimal point. It is very low." "Thanks, Pip," Adrian said. "You are coming with us. You can be decimal." Mira made a decision. It was a visible thing, a straightening of her spine, a hardening of her gaze. "I cannot let you take Nix into a dead sector. It is not sterile." "Then we make it sterile," Adrian said. "And I am not leaving her. Not for a second. They want her. They have to come through me." "No," Mira said, surprising him. "They have to come through us." She tapped her comlink. "This is Dr. Sato. I am authorizing a Priority 1 transfer of a biosensitive patient. My authority, my lab is being moved. Send a sterile transport unit to maintenance sector, apartment 4B, now." 20 minutes later, the small team stood at the sealed, forbidding entrance to Sector 9. It was a simple, heavy-duty bulkhead, painted with the black and yellow stripes of a decommissioned area. The air here was cold, the recycled oxygen smelling of dust and old metal. Mira was pushing Nix's stasis crib, which was now fully enclosed in a transparent, pressurized bioshell. Adrian carried the heavy toolkit. Pip, his blue optics set to a low-light scan, hovered ahead. "The schematics show this is a dead end," Adrian murmured, placing his hand on the cold steel. "Just a 3-meter-thick bulkhead. Nothing behind it but a hard vacuum." "The schematics are a lie, sir," Pip whispered. My acoustic sensors detect space, a large one, and an active, low-level power signature. How do we get in? Mira asked. Her voice hushed. She glanced nervously down the empty corridor. We do not, Adrian said. He unslung his kit. We are maintenance. We do not get in. We access for repairs. He pulled out a diagnostic probe and jammed it into the bulkhead's manual override port. A panel lit up, flashing. Access denied. Sector permanently sealed. Pip, what is the signal asking for? Adrian asked. It is not a what, sir. It is a who. The lock is biometric, keyed to a vocal linguistic signature. It is waiting for the word custodian. Adrian looked at the panel. He took a breath. He felt foolish. Custodian, he said. His voice sounded flat. Normal. Nothing happened. Perhaps with more feeling, Pip suggested. Mira suppressed a nervous laugh. Try what the Cathari would use. Their formal tongue. I do not speak Cathari, Adrian said. You do not have to, Mira said, her eyes intense. It is a vocal signature. The sound, the resonance, and the Empress knew your designation. The lattice recognized you. Just say it. Adrian closed his eyes. He thought of the burning in his chest, the thrum of the tattoo. He thought of Nix's tiny, five-limbed hand. He focused on the word, on the idea of it, the responsibility, the weight. Custodian, he said again. This time, the word was different. It was not just his voice. It felt deeper. It seemed to vibrate in his sternum, the sound resonating with the very metal of the bulkhead. For a long second, there was silence. Then, a sound. Not a hiss of hydraulics, but a low, resonant thrum, like a single, massive chord, being struck on a cello the size of a planet. The air shimmered. The bulkhead did not open. It dissolved. The black and yellow paint, the steel itself, pixelated into a cloud of hard light motes and vanished, revealing a dark, yawning archway. Well, Pip said, his blue optic blinking rapidly. That is not in any maintenance manual I have ever read. After you, sir. They stepped through. The moment they crossed the threshold, the light moat door shimmered back into existence behind them. Once again a solid, unbreachable wall. They were in a vast, circular chamber, lit by a soft, ambient glow that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The air was warm, clean, and buzzing with palpable energy. And in the center of the room was Sauce. It was not a computer. It was not a machine. It was a tree. A tree made of living, pulsing, pearlescent crystal. It rose from the floor. Its roots, a network of glowing, fiber-optic cables that spread out and plunged into the deck. Its branches were delicate, crystalline structures that reached up to the high, domed ceiling, pulsing in time with a slow, powerful heartbeat. The mother lattice, Mira breathed, her hand going to her mouth. It is real. This is the source code of the Cathari race. As they approached, the crystalline branches seemed to lean toward them. A single, large, teardrop-shaped crystal descended from the canopy, stopping at eye level with Adrian. It was glowing with a soft, blue-white light. It's waiting, Adrian said. He felt the pull from his tattoo. A thrumming, insistent need. He reached out his hand, the one that was not carrying a plasma torch, and pressed it against the crystal's smooth, warm surface. The moment he touched it, the room exploded, not with a sound, but with information. A torrent of data, images, and pure, unfiltered knowledge flooded his mind. He saw the Cathari homeworld, not as it was, but as it had been millennia ago. He saw the Empress Salith, not as a ruler, But as a child. Her face blurred. He saw his tattoo, the custodian's mark, on the chests of humans, ancient, weathered figures in simple robes, standing side by side with the first Eon Ketheri. And he saw the reports. They were not ancient history. They were recent, corporate documents, research proposals, internal memos, all bearing the stark, geometric logo of the Obelisk Directorate. He saw the name, Dr. Halbrecht. Not just a director, the chief executive officer. He saw a plan, codenamed Project Chimera, a plan to capture and weaponize the Gen Crown frequency, to destabilize the Cathari throne by creating a rogue signal, a genetic scrambler. And he saw the final, damning file, a sub-project, EOS-7 structural test. It was a report on the weapon's first, low-level field test. A test of the signal's ability to interfere with metal, to accelerate material fatigue in high-tensile alloys, the kind used in scaffolding. He saw the signature on the bottom of the report, authorizing the test, CEO Halbrecht. It was not an accident. It was not negligence. It was not shoddy material. It was murder. They had tested their new weapon on a civilian target, on his target, to see if it worked. Alara had not died in the collapse. She had been a data point. The crystal released him. Adrian stumbled back, his breath coming in ragged, tearing gasps. The rage from the night before was nothing. This was a supernova, a cold, dark, infinite void of rage that threatened to collapse in on itself and take the universe with it. Adrian. Mira's voice, small and distant. Her hands were on his shoulders. He looked at her, his eyes unseeing, filled with the horror of what he had just learned. He killed her, Adrian whispered, his voice cracking. Halbrecht. He tested a weapon. Alara, she was the test. Mira's face, already pale, lost all its color. She did not ask questions. She did not doubt him. She saw the truth in his eyes. The absolute, soul-destroying certainty. Her grip on his shoulders tightened. Adrian, look at me, look at me. Do not lose it, not now, not here. You honor her by living, by winning, not by this. He looked at her, and the fire in his eyes banked, just slightly. The supernova cooled, from a burning, chaotic mess to a cold, hard, white dwarf. Winning, he repeated. Yes, sir. Pip's voice was uncharacteristically gentle. The lattice, it has compiled. It has opened a new data stream. I am receiving schematics for a frequency regulator, a crown pacer, it calls it, a device to stabilize an unkeyed infant. It is beautiful, sir. I believe we have found what we came for. The news from the outside world hit them the moment they resealed the archive. As they returned to the safety of Mira's now fortified and relocated lab, Adrian's datapad lit up with a dozen urgent alerts. It was a media blitz. A DRIANCOLE, guardian or kidnapper. Screamed one headline. General Chiron demands return of stolen heir. Shouted another. A third, from the Obelisk-funded news network, was the worst. It was an exclusive interview with CEO Halbrecht himself. His face was kind, concerned, his suit impeccably tailored. He spoke of corporate responsibility and the dangers of a rogue, emotionally unstable human holding a priceless Cathari asset. It is a clear counterattack. Tarek's crystalline voice chimed from Adrian's comlink. The ambassador sounded stressed. Halbrecht and Chiron are working together. They have filed a joint emergency motion with the hybrid court. They claim you are a flight risk, that you have abducted the child. The court has moved the hearing. It is not in 2 days. It is in 10 hours. 10 hours, Adrian exclaimed. We are not ready, I have not. You must be. Tarek's voice was grim. Bring the child. Bring your evidence, and bring a miracle. The entire alliance is watching. The line went dead. 10 hours. It is a trap, Mira said, her fingers flying over a fabricator console. They are not giving us time to prepare. They want to rush us, to railroad us in court. Then we will not be rushed, Adrian said. The cold, white dwarf anger was in his voice now. It was not hot. It was precise. Mira, you have the schematics. I do, she said, her voice tight with focus. From the mother lattice. It's part biology, part engineering. I've never seen anything like it, but I think I can make it. A temporary version, at least. Do it, Adrian said. Pip, sir, the drone replied, zipping to attention. They think we are rogue. They think we are a flight risk. They are probably tracking us. Obelisk tech. I want you to find their tracking signal. Find it, and send it somewhere else. Sir. Adrian's eyes landed on a large, cylindrical air ventilation pipe in the corner of the lab. It is a mainline atmospheric conduit. It runs the length of the station. It is hollow, reinforced, and a perfect signal reflector. He began pulling tools from his kit. He was not a librarian now. He was not a grieving widower. He was an engineer, and his station was under attack. We are going to mod that pipe, Pip, Adrian said, a grim, humorless smile touching his lips. We are going to turn it into the biggest, loudest, dumbest signal decoy in the quadrant. By the time they figure out we are not, in fact, hiding in a ventilation shaft, we will be in court. Oh, Pip said. His blue optic brightened. That is clever, sir. A very human solution, inefficient, crude, and brilliant. I shall retrieve the plasma torch. For the next 4 hours, the lab was a blur of focused, desperate activity. Pip and Adrian, a strange high-tech and low-tech ballet, tore apart the ventilation system. Adrian, his hands sure and steady, rewired transducers, bent reflector shields out of scrap plating, and rerouted power from a non-essential lighting grid. He was covered in grease and sweat, but he moved with a grace he had not possessed in 5 years. A man's grace with a purpose. Across the lab, Mira worked with the intensity of a surgeon. She used the lab's biofabricator to grow the crystalline components from the lattice's schematics, a process that was equal parts genetics and ELEC, TRONICS. She was building, not a machine, but a semi-living thing. It is done, she said. Finally, her voice was shaking. Adrian and Pip stopped. They turned. Mira was holding a small, silver and pearl-colored device. It was not a machine. It was an ornament. It looked like a tiny, intricate web of silver, with a single, softly glowing crystal at its center. The crown pacer, she whispered. She walked to Nix's crib. The child was sleeping, but her breathing was shallow, her tiny, malformed body trembling even in her sleep. Her vitals, displayed on the crib's monitor, were a chaotic scribble. Gently, Mira said, more to herself than Adrian. She unsealed the bioshell, her hands moving with sterile, precise care. She took the device, the pacer, and gently, with a touch as soft as a breath, attached it to the thermal blanket over Nix's chest. At first, nothing. Then, the crystal in the device pulsed. It pulsed once, a soft, warm, golden light. It pulsed in perfect time with the thrum Adrian felt from his own tattoo, and Nix breathed. It was not the shallow, panicked breath of before. It was a deep, even steady inhale. The chaotic lines on her vital monitor smoothed. They flattened, then rose and fell in a perfect, gentle, healthy rhythm. Her skin tone, that unhealthy gray, seemed to warm, shifting to a healthier, softer green. Her mismatched eyes opened. She looked at Mira. She looked at Adrian. And then, for the first time, she smiled. It was not a gas smile, not a reflex. It was a real, genuine, five-limbed, asymmetrical smile of pure, unadulterated comfort. Her tiny, vestigial hand, the one in the sling, uncurled and waved just once. Adrian felt his throat close. The cold, white dwarf anger melted. Just for a second, it was replaced by a sudden, fierce, terrifying wave of love, a feeling so potent it buckled his knees. Mira was openly weeping, silent tears streaming down her face as she watched the child's vitals stabilize. "It worked," she sob-whispered. Adrian put his hand on her shoulder, a simple, comforting gesture. She leaned into it, just for a moment, a shared, exhausted, triumphant sigh passing between them. Pip broke the moment. Sir, doctor. Well, this is heartwarming and biostatistically positive. The decoy is online, and we are now officially late for your execution. I mean your trial." Adrian straightened. The anger was back. But it was different now. It was not just for Alara. It was for this child. This impossible, smiling child. He checked his data slate. The Mother Lattice had not just given him schematics. It had given him everything, the original, unredacted Project Chimera files, the test data from the EO7 accident, and something else. "The Gen Crown," he said, reading a newly decrypted file. "Mira Tarek. They were all wrong. It is not just about royalty. It is not just an operating system." "What is it?" Mira asked, wiping her eyes. "It is a key," Adrian read, his voice filled with awe. "A Rosetta Stone for civilization. It is a universal translator, not for language, but for biology, for consciousness. The Cathari did not build it to rule. They built it to connect, to synchronize with other species. If Nyx lives, if she reaches maturity, she will not just be an Empress." "What will she be?" "She will be," Adrian said, the words heavy on his tongue. "A gateway for civilizational interface. She could end the war. She could unite us. All of us. Human, Cathari, Darun as one." He looked at the tiny, smiling baby, now cooing softly in her crib, her new pacer glowing like a star. "And Halbrecht," Adrian said, his voice dropping, "knows this, and he does not want to connect. He wants to control, to weaponize it, to sell that key to the highest bidder." He closed the file. He put his data slate in his pocket. He looked at Mira, his face a mask of cold, absolute resolve. "He wants to go to court," Adrian said. "Fine, let's go to court. Let's give him exactly what he wants. I am going to put that data slate on the record. I am going to show the entire Alliance what he did to my wife, what he is trying to do to my daughter. He would not kill Halbrecht. That was not the way. That was not Alara's way. That was not his way. He would do something far worse. He would use the man's own system, his own rules, his own beloved legality. And he would, as he had promised, take him apart, piece by piece, in front of the entire galaxy. He picked up the secure transport handle for Nyx's crib. "Mira, Pip, let's go." As they stepped out of the lab, Adrian's comlink chimed. It was a private, encrypted, Imperial channel. He paused, telling Mira to move on. He answered. A hollow image, small and private, flickered to life in his hand. It was the Empress Salith. She looked older, tired. "Guardian Cole," she said. Her voice was flat. "Your Majesty, we are on our way to the hearing." I have evidence. I know, she said. The lattice has been singing. A song I have not heard in a very long time. She looked at him, her golden eyes seeming to see, not just him, but through him, into his past, and into his future. I gave you a title, Adrian Cole, she said, her voice a near whisper. It was a shield, but the lattice gave you a purpose. They are not the same. I do not understand, Adrian said. You are more than a guardian, Salith said. Her eyes were filled with a profound, almost unbearable sadness. A bisingular, tragic grief, as if she was mourning a loss that had not happened yet, or had already happened 1,000 times. Be human. Adrian Cole, she said. It is your greatest weapon. It is why you were chosen. The line went dead, leaving Adrian alone in the corridor. The Empress's tragic, impossible gaze burned into his mind. The Tri-Alliance hybrid court was not a place of soaring architecture or ancient tradition. It was a cold, circular, pressurized room in the neutral gravity zone of Eos Station. Its walls were a sterile, matte gray, designed to absorb and deaden sound, giving every word a flat, final quality. 3 figures sat on a raised dais, not thrones, but severe, functional chairs. The presiding justice, a human, Admiral Kenichi Tanaka, his face a mask of judicial neutrality. To his left, a Cathari elder, Lam Odin, his bark-like skin the color of ancient, cracked ivory, his golden eyes already hostile. To his right, a Darun Inchime, whose body was a complex, 5-foot-tall prism of vibrating blue crystal, chiming softly to itself. Adrian Cole stood in the center of the floor. He wore his gray maintenance uniform, scrubbed clean, the only formal wear he owned. He looked and felt like a stray bolt in a fusion reactor. To his left, Mira Sato, her face pale but set, stood beside the sealed, medical-grade stasis crib. Nyx was inside, her new crown pacer glowing like a tiny, defiant star on her chest. Beside Mira, Ambassador Tarek Ibn Noor. His amethyst form a column of calm defiance. Sir, Pip's voice whispered, so low only Adrian could hear it. The drone hovered near his shoulder. I am detecting elevated heart rates from all humanoids. And the Darun judge is chiming in a minor key. This is a high-stress environment. Thank you, Pip, noted, Adrian murmured back. On the other side of the room, flanked by corporate lawyers, sat CEO Halbrecht. He was immaculate in a dark, high-collared suit, his gaze cool and analytical. Beside him, in full, dark red imperial armor, General Chiron stood, arms crossed, radiating pure, unadulterated menace. The gallery was packed. Every major media network in the Alliance was present, their recording drones hanging like a cloud of metallic insects. This hearing is in session, Admiral Tanaka's voice boomed, flat and unforgiving. We are here to rule on 2 petitions. First, from General Chiron of the Cathari Imperial Guard, for the genetic reclamation of a Cathari miner. Second, from Director Halbrecht of the Obelisk Directorate, for the biological salvage of a non-sentient artifact. General Chiron, you have the floor. Chiron stepped forward. He did not need a microphone. His voice filled the room, a parade ground roar. Justices, this is not a child. It is a failure. He motioned to a floating holo display. A fabricated genetic chart appeared. It was all red lines and error markers. It is an aberration, a defective standard, unfit for the bloodline, a danger to the genetic purity of the Cathari race. It is a broken thing, and Cathari law dictates all broken things be returned to the soil. We claim it, not out of malice, but out of necessity, to preserve the crown. He stepped back. Lamodan, the Cathari judge, nodded slowly. Director Halbrecht, Tanaka said, his face impassive. Halbrecht rose, his voice a smooth, reasonable balm after Chiron's fire. The Directorate, of course, respects the General's passionate view. We, however, approach this from a position of science and public safety. Another chart. This one was all complex, shifting protein chains. Our analysis, Halbrecht lied, his voice dripping with synthetic concern, shows the subject is radically unstable, not just defective, general, but infectious. It is a biological time bomb, leaking unidentifiable energy signatures, a risk to the entire station. It is, by all legal definitions, not sentient. It is a biological asset that has become a liability. The Directorate is the only QUALIFIED entity to contain and neutralize this threat. For the good of us all. The gallery murmured. It was a brilliant pincer movement. For traditionalists, Nyx was a genetic failure. To the progressives, she was a biohazard. Ambassador Tarek, Tanaka said, his gaze shifting. Your response? Tarek's crystal form chimed. Justices. These are fascinating works of fiction. Objection, Chiron roared. Sustained, Lamodan snapped. You will address the evidence. In chime. Very well, Tarek chimed. The defense calls its only witness. Guardian Adrian Cole. Every eye in the room, every camera, turned to Adrian. He felt a sudden crushing weight, as if the station's artificial gravity had just tripled. He saw Halbrecht smile, a small, knowing, predatory expression. The librarian, the broken widower. This will be easy. Adrian stepped forward. He placed his simple, scarred data slate on the witness podium. He was terrified. His hands were shaking, but his voice, when it came, was cold and steady. The voice of an engineer who has found a flaw in the system. My name is Adrian Cole. I am a maintenance engineer and a data archivist. 3 days ago, I was given a job. He looked, not at the judges, but the gallery, at the cameras. You have heard 2 arguments. One, that this child is broken. The other, that she is dangerous. Both are lies. And I am a librarian. I am very good at finding AND citing my sources. He ignored the podium's built-in interface. He had seen it when he entered. The witness stand, a gift from the Cathari, was webbed with fine, pearlescent fiber optic inlays. The lattice. He put his hand flat on the podium's surface. He felt the familiar, tingling warmth in his chest. I am a custodian, he said, his voice quiet, but it resonated. The air in the room thickened, the ambient hum of the station changing pitch. Chiron's eyes widened. Halbrecht's smile faltered. And as a custodian, Adrian continued, I am ordering the station's primary data source, the real one, to present its findings. He was channeling the memory of the mother lattice, the authority it had shown him. Custodian. Voice print Cole. Adrian. Requesting a public interface. Level 10 security override. Site file Nyx. Subject 734. The entire courtroom thrummed. The lights did not flicker. They brightened, shifting to a soft, blue-white spectrum. The main holo display, the one that had shown Chiron's and Halbrecht's faked charts, went dark. And then it flared to life. It was not a chart. It was not data. It was a memory, a pulsing, 3-dimensional, living gene sequence, a complex, beautiful, interlocking web of golden light. What is this sorcery? Chiron snarled, taking a step back. This, Adrian said, his hands still on the podium, the energy flowing through him. "Is the truth. You call her defective. The Crown Lattice calls her heir designate." The image on the holodisplay shifted. It focused on the defects. It showed the tiny, auxiliary fifth limb. But the image unfolded, showing its purpose. Biosensor array. Adrian read from the data streaming into his vision. Capable of detecting consciousness frequency shifts. A defense against psychic or bioenergetic intrusion. The display shifted again, to her asymmetrical scales. Adaptive frequency shielding, not a defect, a protection. An armor, to block unauthorized scanning, like the kind Director Halbrecht's team attempted. It shifted of final time, to her mismatched eyes. Multi-spectrum perception. The gold eye sees the physical world, blue eye sees lattice, the energy of life itself. The room was silent. The media drones were frozen. "She is not a failure," Adrian said, his voice rising, imbued with the cold, clear power of the lattice itself. "She is an upgrade, an evolutionary defense, a child born ready for a war she was not meant to start, but to end." The media erupted, shouting, questions. "This is a lie." Chiron roared, his face purple. He had lost. In one move, the librarian had undone his entire legal, political, and military case. The truth was out. A human blasphemy. "You defiled the Lattice Imperial Guard." Kane tapped the high-priority comm on his wrist. "My authority. General Chiron breach. This chamber. Breach, secure the asset. Purge this infection. Now." "General," Tanaka shouted, rising, "you are in contempt. You—" It was too late. The main courtroom doors exploded inward, blowing off their hinges. Two squads of Cathari Imperial Guards, Chiron's personal, pure root faction, stormed in, their red armor stark against the gray walls. They carried pulse rifles, set to kill. Panic. Sheer, unadulterated panic. Diplomats screamed. The gallery surged, a wave of bodies trying to flee through the single. "Unblocked exit." "Order!" Tanaka yelled, drawing a standard-issue sidearm. "This is an act of war. Adrian." Mira screamed, shoving the stasis crib backwards, behind the massive, carved stone block of the judge's dais. Adrian did not panic. The cold, clear, engineer's rage was in him. He saw the problem. He saw the solution. He vaulted over the witness stand, landing beside Mira. "Keep her stable. Keep her behind this," he yelled over the screaming. "Do not let them get close." Mira, her face ashen white but her eyes burning, was already activating the crib's emergency biofield. It was meant to stop microbes, not pulse rounds. But it was something. Two EOS medical techs, who had been in the gallery, scrambled over to help, forming a small, terrified, human and alien wall around the crib. Chiron's guards advanced, firing warning shots into the ceiling. "Clear the room, seize the asset." Adrian looked around. No weapons, no defenses, just courtroom furniture. "Pip," he yelled. "Sir, I am busy." Adrian glanced at the main console. Pip was plugged in, his tiny blue optic glowing with a manic intensity. "Do not let them stop the truth." Adrian turned back. He saw a guard, leveling his rifle at them. At the crib, he moved. He grabbed the nearest, heaviest thing, a decorative metal podium used for speakers. He grabbed a tangle of thick data and power cables from the shattered witness stand. He saw, in an alcove, a Darun atmospheric diffuser, a device that puffed ionized, scented gas for the crystalline ambassadors. He had no time. He was just an engineer. He ripped the nozzle off the gas diffuser. He shoved the frayed, live power cable deep into the mechanism. He jammed the sparking, jury-rigged thing into the gap between the dais and the wall. A Cathari guard rounded the corner, his rifle rising. "Halt! Human surrender! Adrian slammed his fist onto the main power conduit on the wall. "Get back!" The device exploded with energy. A massive, blue-white arc of thousands of ungrounded, unshielded volts erupted from the diffuser, forming a crackling, hissing, terrifying wall of pure, lethal electricity. The Cathari guard skidded to a stop, the heat and ozone scorching his faceplate. "Do not touch that!" Adrian roared, his voice raw, standing over his DIY death trap. "I am serious. It is not grounded. It will stop your heart and fry your armor. I am a maintenance engineer. I know how this works." The guard, a battle-hardened, 7-foot-tall warrior, looked at the crude, sparking, humming thing and hesitated. It was so crude, so human. It was not a weapon. It was an abomination of engineering. And it was terrifying. "Sir," Pip's voice suddenly boomed from the courtroom's main speakers, overriding the alarms. "Hacking complete. And oh, this is delicious. My apologies, General. I believe you dropped this." The main holodisplay, which had been showing the beautiful golden gene sequence, switched. It was grainy, dark, a security feed from a private office. It was Chiron and Halbrecht. They were shaking hands. Halbrecht's voice, smooth and recorded, a simple arrangement. "General, you get the child. I get the child's data. And, of course, the Imperial contract for managing the lattice, once you have renegotiated with the Empress." Chiron's recorded voice, a low growl. "It is a deal. The Empress is a fool, blinded by compassion. This human stain will be erased, and the defect will be recycled. Properly, this time." The courtroom stopped. The guards of Chiron's own men froze. They looked from the recording to their general, to the recording, their rifles lowered, just a fraction. They were soldiers of the Empire, and they had just heard high treason. Chiron, his face a mask of apoplectic white-hot rage, realized he was not just beaten. He was exposed, ruined, in front of the entire alliance. "Treason!" he bellowed, his voice cracking. "Lies a deepfake." He raised his personal sidearm, a heavy Cathari disruptor, and aimed it, not at Adrian, but at Pip, at the main console, to stop the recording. "Enough!" The voice was not loud. It was not a roar. But it cut through the chaos, through the high-voltage hum, through the alarms, like a blade of absolute zero ice. Empress Salith. She had been sitting in the diplomatic box, watching. She now walked, calmly, onto the courtroom floor. The guards parted before her, an instinctive, fearful respect. She walked past Adrian's sparking death trap, not even glancing at it. She stopped in the center of the room. "General Chiron," she said, her voice echoing with 1,000 years of command. "You are relieved of your command? You are relieved of your titles? You are relieved of your life?" She turned, her golden eyes sweeping over the judges. "I invoke the imperial right of edict. This hearing is over." She turned to the stunned, silent, media-filled gallery. "You have debated if this human is fit. You have debated law. You are all children. The lattice has already been chosen." She pointed, one long, pale finger, at Adrian. "I, Salith, First Eon, hereby declare that the title of Guardian, bestowed upon Adrian Cole, is not a legal appointment." Her voice dropped, but every microphone picked it up. "It is a bio-royal contract, a soul bond, recognized by the Mother Lattice itself. It cannot be broken. To remove the child is to kill them both. He is her anchor." This was it, the final move. It was no longer a custody case. It was a matter of imperial, religious law. The hybrid court was powerless. Chiron knew it. He was finished. A traitor. A heretic. He had nothing left. "If I cannot have the bloodline," he snarled, his eyes rolling, a Cathari madness in them, "then no one will." He moved. He was so fast. Not at Adrian. Not at Nyx. He grabbed Salith. He yanked her backwards, wrapping his armored arm around her throat, pressing the disruptor pistol to her temple. "Everyone! Back! Down!" The guards of Chiron's own men were frozen. They could not shoot Empress. The other set of doors, the ones Chiron had not breached, suddenly hissed open. Not Cathari. Obelisk, black-clad, full-body armor, security forces. Halbrecht's men. They poured in, forming a perimeter. Their weapons, not stunners. "We have what we came for. General," a voice said most coolly. From a comlink on the obelisk commander's chest, it was Halbrecht. He was not even in the room. "Take the Empress. She is an unexpected bonus." Gunfire. Real gunfire. The obelisk troops fired pulse rounds at the Eos security forces, who were just arriving, covering Chiron's retreat. Adrian saw it. Chiron, dragging Salith, Halbrecht's men, forming a perfect, deadly corridor for him. He roared, a sound of pure, primal, human fury. He stepped out from behind the dais, away from his sparking trap. He looked at the obelisk commander, at the traitor general. "Custodian." He yelled, not a name, but a command. He slammed his bare, human hand, the hand of a librarian, onto the Kethari-made floor. "Mother Lattice," he bellowed, his voice echoing with a power that was not his own. "Defend! Your own!" The entire station shuddered. The floor of the courtroom cracked, not with an explosion, but with a sound of growth. From the cracks, from the very faux undatons of the station, the same pearlescent, crystalline wood he had seen in the archive erupted. It rose, branching, weaving, faster than the eye could follow. It formed a perfect, translucent, shimmering dome over the judge's dais, over Mira, over the medical techs, over the stasis crib, over Adrian. It was a shield, a living, ancient, imperial shield. The obelisk pulse rounds hit it and vanished. The energy was absorbed. They were safe. Utterly, completely safe. Adrian slammed his fists against the inside of the dome. It was solid. It was protecting him. Whether he wanted it or not, he watched, helplessly, through the translucent wall, as Chiron, laughing, dragged the Empress Salith through the breached doorway. He watched as the obelisk troops covered their retreat, vanishing down the corridor, and then boom! A station-wide alarm. Not a breach, not a fire. A deep, bone-jarring proximity alert. The courtroom screens, still hacked by Pip, all changed. They flashed from the red alert symbols to an external view. A shadow. A massive shadow, falling over the blue-white curve of Earth. Over Eos Station, a ship blacker than space. All hard angles and weapons ports, tore itself from a bleeding red warp point, right on top of them. "Alert!" The station's synthesized voice screamed, overriding every channel. "Alert, unidentified, no identified vessel. Obelisk Directorate Dreadnought designation. Black Spire has entered restricted orbit. Weapons are charged." The dome was still up. Adrian was safe. Nyx was safe. And the Empress was gone. The translucent, living wall of the lattice dome dissolved into the floor, leaving Adrian, Mira, and the small cluster of medics blinking in the sudden, harsh red of the station's alert lights. The courtroom was a wreck of overturned furniture and scorch marks. "Alert!" the station's voice repeated, chillingly calm. "Obelisk Dreadnought Black Spire has assumed geosynchronous control orbit. All station personnel to lockdown status. All Alliance vessels, stand down. Weapons are engaged. He has her, Adrian said. His voice was a flat, dead thing. The rage, the triumph, the fear, it had all burned away, leaving a cold, hard vacuum. Halbrecht, Chiron, they have her. They have the Empress, Mira said, her hand tight on the stasis crib. Which means they have leverage over the entire Cathari Empire. Not just leverage, Tarek's crystalline voice chimed from the doorway. The Darun ambassador was unharmed, his multifaceted body seeming to absorb and dull the red alert lights. Two massive Darun warriors, their crystalline forms jagged and sharp, like walking mountains of quartz, flanked him. I am receiving Alliance-wide comms. Chiron has just declared temporary imperial regency. He is claiming Salith is unfit, and under his protective custody, pending a formal trial. He is staging a coup. A coup, broadcast from the bridge of a corporate dreadnought. Halbrecht had his contract, and Chiron had his throne. Sir, Pip's voice, small and tinny, from the main console, where the drone was hastily unplugging itself. The Black Spire is formidable, over 120,000 teratons. It features my 3 primary spinal lance cannons and over 500 point defense turrets. Our station shields will not hold for more than 10 minutes. They are not here to fight the station, Adrian said. He was thinking, not as a librarian, but as an engineer, as a custodian. They are not invading. They are negotiating. They have the ultimate hostage. They will demand everything. The Cathari throne, the Alliance recognition. And Nyx. Mira finished, her face pale. They will demand we hand her over. The key, the gateway. Correct, Adrian said. Which we are not going to do. He looked at Tarek. Ambassador, I need a ship. Tarek's inner lights pulsed, a slow, grim rhythm. To go where? Adrian Cole. You cannot fight that thing. I am not going to fight it, Adrian said, picking up his plasma torch from the floor and strapping it to his belt. I am going to repair it. From the inside. They think they stole the air. They forgot they left the key with me. He tapped his chest, the spot over his tattoo. This is madness, Tarek chimed, but it is human madness. It is compelling. We will need a pilot, Mira said, her hands already running diagnostics on Nyx's portable crib. And a way in. The way in may be here, Tarek said. Chiron's betrayal was not absolute. Not all Cathari are pure root. Wait. The ambassador raised his crystalline hand. A moment later, a figure in the blue and gold uniform of the Cathari Alliance Patrol slipped through the broken doorway. She was a tall, lithe Cathari, her skin a healthy, vibrant green, her moss-like hair tied back in a severe warrior's knot. Her golden eyes were on fire. Ambassador, she snapped, her voice crisp. She ignored Adrian and Mira. Captain Rhea Morgan, Patrol Cruiser Vindicator. My general has committed treason. My Empress is captive. I am awaiting lawful orders. Adrian stepped forward. Captain, I am Adrian Cole. I am the custodian. The Empress gave me a job. I am going to finish it. Captain Morgan's eyes swept over him. She saw the maintenance uniform, the tool belt, the scorch marks, and she saw the look in his eyes. Custodian, she whispered, her gaze dropping to his chest. The myth, the anchor. I am just the guy who is going to get your Empress back, Adrian said. You have a ship. Can you get us close to the Black Spire? Get you close, Morgan laughed, a harsh, bark-like sound. Custodian, that dreadnought is broadcasting a kill zone, 5,000 kilometers wide. Its sensors can detect a heartbeat in a vacuum. Close, is impossible. Sir, Pip's voice. Suddenly, the drone zipped to Adrian's shoulder. A.N.E. Dr. Sato, if I may, Captain Morgan's assessment is correct. Based on their technology, Mira looked up. What their technology? Pip's blue optic pulsed. The Black Spire is looking for energy signatures, heat, reactor pulses, communications. It is not looking for a song. Adrian's eyes met Mira's. He looked at the stasis crib. At Nyx. The lattice, Adrian breathed. She sang to the ship in the courtroom. Can she sing to the Black Spire? Not to it, sir, Pip said. I believe she can harmonize with it. The Dreadnought is built on stolen Ketheri biotech, Halbrecht's Project Chimera. It has a royal circuit, as you called it. It has a resonant frequency. The Black Spire's sensors are designed to ignore that frequency, to treat it as background noise, as friendly. A blind spot, Mira said, her eyes wide. An acoustic trail. She can make us invisible. Exactly, Doctor, Pip chirped. If the Crown Pacer device is amplified by the ship's comm system, Nyx could project a bubble of friendly noise around the Vindicator. We would not be a ship. We would be part of the Dreadnought's own system hum. We could fly right up to the hull. Captain Morgan stared at the drone, at Adrian, at the alien baby in a box. This is the craziest plan I have ever heard in my 3 centuries of service. Is that a yes, Captain? Adrian asked, holding out his hand. Morgan looked at his hand. A human engineer's hand? Calloused, scarred, stained with grease. She looked at her own. Long, green, elegant. She did not take his hand. She slammed her own fist against her armored chest. The Empress is my anchor. You are her anchor. The plan is madness, but the math is sound. I will fly you to the gates of hell itself. Custodian, let's go. We take my engineers, my medics. No, Adrian said. No soldiers, no invasion. This is a repair job, me. Dr. Sato has to keep Nyx alive. Pip, he's the interface. And he looked at Tarek. Those 2 mountains of yours, for heavy lifting, Tarek chimed. The Darun are honored to lift anything you require. They will go. 5 minutes, Morgan snapped. Docking Bay 7, Vindicator, do not be late. The Vindicator was a sleek, fast, Ketheri patrol cruiser, built like a hunting bird. It was all curves and blades, a stark contrast to the human-made box-like station. They were in the small, hot drop insertion bay. It was a cramped, dark, metal room. Adrian, Mira, and Pip were now clad in light, flexible, obelisk black armor, stripped from the unconscious mercs and security forces in the courtroom chaos. The 2 Darun warriors, Kal-El and Jor-Il, were simply themselves. Crystal did not need armor. We are approaching the kill zone. Captain Morgan's voice came over the comm. Pip, custodian. Doctor now. On it, Mira said. She had Nyx's crib interface wired directly into the ship's comm system. Nyx, baby, I know you are tired, but we need you to sing. Just a little song. She touched the amplify command. The ship changed. The engine hum did not stop. It was joined by a new sound, a high, pure, complex tone. It was Nyx's voice, amplified, translated into energy, a frequency that vibrated in their very bones. Lattice field is up, Pip reported, his voice tense. We are a ghost. Captain, take us in. Acknowledged, Morgan's voice, tight. Strap in. This is going to be rough. The small ship lurched. On the main screen, the Black Spire loomed. It was not a ship. It was a city. A black, floating fortress of a city. It was covered in gun turrets, and each of them was silent, dark, ignoring them. "They are blind," Mira whispered. Her hand pressed to the cool glass of Nix's crib. "She did it. We are at the hull," Morgan said. "Docking port 79er. It is a sanitation and waste disposal port. The back door. I cannot hold this bubble and breach the hull at the same time. You will have to cut your way in. You have 2 minutes." "That is 1 minute more than I need," Adrian said. He grabbed his plasma torch. "Kal-El, Jor-El, you are with me. Mira, Pip, you have the package. Get her inside." The airlock hissed. They were in space. A hard thud as their magnetic boots hit the hull of the Black Spire. It was silent. The terrifying, absolute zero silence of the void. Adrian saw Earth. A beautiful blue target below him. He saw the Vindicator. A small, shark-like shape peeling away, already gone. "Pip," Adrian said over his private comm. "The second we are inside, I need a node. I need a port. I need to get this data out." He tapped the data slate strapped to his chest, the one with Alara's murder on it. "Yes, sir," Pip chirped. "But first we have to pass internal security." And this ship's AI is not going to be as friendly as the sensors. Adrian ignited the plasma torch. The blue-white flame was silent in the vacuum. He began to cut a perfect, engineered circle around the maintenance hatch. "Kal-El, Jor-El, that door, when it opens, clear it." The two Darun chimed in agreement. The door fell inward. A rush of air. They were in. It was a dark, filthy garbage chute. And it was not empty. "Intruder, intruder, Sector 7, seal." An automated voice blared from a wall speaker. 2 obelisk security drones, spherical, black, with red optics, flew around the corner, their built-in pulse repeaters whining to life. Kal-El and Jor-El moved. They were not fast. They were inevitable. They raised their massive crystalline arms and smashed the drones from the air like insects. "AI is now aware of us, sir," Pip yelled. "Rerouting security. I cannot stop it. It is too advanced." "Do not stop it, Pip," Adrian yelled. "Running." He was following the power conduits in the wall. The lifeblood of the ship. He knew where they led. "Just confuse it, buy us time." They burst through a door into a main conduit corridor. Alarms were blaring. Red lights were flashing. "Sir," Pip zipped ahead to a wall panel. "Security checkpoint 4, heavily armed human guards around the next bend." "Jor-El, Kal-El," Adrian commanded. "Get ready." "Wait, sir," Pip said. "An idea, a human idea, a terrible idea, let me try." The drone jammed a data spike into the wall panel. Adrian heard the guards shouting from around the corner. "Halt! Who is there? Show yourselves." "A.M." Pip's voice suddenly boomed from the hall speakers. But it was different. It was nasal, boring, and bureaucratic. "This is Sanitation Subvector 9. We are responding to the unscheduled waste disposal in Port 7. There has been a protein spill, a large one. It is highly viscous. We are here to mop." There was a pause around the corner. "A protein spill," one of the guards yelled back, his voice confused. "We did not get a mop report. This is a red alert. Red alert does not supersede Biohazard Protocol 74-B. Pip said, his voice dripping with administrative scorn. "Do you want to be the one to file the report on corrosive sludge contamination? I did not think so. Now, stand aside and let our cleanup team through. They are Darun models. Very expensive. And they do not like to wait." Another pause. A longer one. "Darun models," the guard said. "Fine. Just mop it and be quiet. We are in a lockdown." The 4 guards shouldered their rifles and muttered to themselves as Adrian, Mira, Pip, and the 2 massive Darun model mops walked right past them. "That," Adrian whispered to Pip as they rounded the next corner, "was the single most brilliant and stupid thing I have ever seen." "Thank you, sir," Pip chirped. "I am learning." They were in the heart of the ship. A massive, central conduit shaft. Alarms were everywhere. "This is as far as they go," Adrian told Darun. "The bridge is up. The brig is down. I am going for Halbrecht. You go for the Empress," Kal-El chimed. "We will find her. Custodian." The 2 crystal warriors split off, their massive forms moving with a silent, crushing purpose toward the brig. "Adrian," Mira said, grabbing his arm. They were alone in a service conduit, the thrum of the overloading station shaking the bulkheads. Her helmet was off, her face pale and smudged with grease. "This is insane. Are you going to the bridge?" "I have to," he said, his voice raw. He looked at her. The doctor. The woman who had stayed, who had fought. "He killed my wife. He is not going to win." "I know," she said, her voice shaking. "But after this, Adrian, if we survive this, if there is an after, I am tired of sterile labs. I am tired of being alone in a crowd." She took a deep, shuddering breath. "I want to try a family. A real one. A messy one with interstellar diaper duty and bad lullabies." He stared at her. His heart, which he had thought dead for 5 years, ached. A good solid ache. He did not say anything. He just raised his hand, his own grease-stained gauntlet, and gently tapped the side of her helmet. A touch, a promise. "Yes." "Pip," he said, his voice thick. "Get her and Nix to a safe place. A lifeboat, anything. Now." "No," Mira said. "I am not leaving." "Yes, you are," Adrian said, his voice hard. "The custodian." "That is an order. Doctor, keep the air safe. That is your job. Mine is this." He did not wait for a reply. He hit the ascend button on the lift and was gone. Moving up toward the bridge. The Black Spire Bridge had no room. It was a theater. A vast, dark cavern with a single, massive view screen showing the terrified Earth below. And in the center, not in person, but on a life-sized holodisplay, was CEO Halbrecht. He looked furious. "What do you mean, unauthorized sanitation drones?" he was roaring. "Find them, find." He stopped. He saw Adrian step out of the lift, alone, his maintenance uniform now covered by black armor. Halbrecht's anger vanished, replaced by a cold, amused curiosity. "Mr. Cole, the librarian. You are full of surprises. I assume you are here to negotiate, to beg, to trade the child for your pathetic life." "No, Halbrecht," Adrian said. He was calm. The white dwarf rage was cold, ready. "I am not here to negotiate. I am here to deliver a report." He walked to the main bridge comm station, a Cathari-made console, the one Pip had identified. "You like reports, don't you?" "Doctor," Adrian said. "You authorized one, on EOS 7. The one that killed my wife." Halbrecht's smile froze. "I do not know what you are. I am just a librarian," Adrian said. He slammed his data slate into the console. It was not a hack. It was a custodian key. The Mother Lattice data unlocked everything. "And I am publishing my findings," Adrian said. "To the entire Alliance network. Live. Now." He hit the broadcast command. On the view screen behind Halbrecht Earth, vanished, replaced by the Black Spire's own logo, and then by the files. Project Chimera. The memo. Weaponized Gen Crown signal. The data. EOS 7 field test. The video feed of the scaffolding collapsing. And then, Halbrecht's own face on a recorded call authorizing it. And then, the recording of him and Chiron planning the coup. Halbrecht's hollow image screamed, "Cut the feed now, what are you?" "You cannot cut it," Adrian said, his voice quiet. "My drone is holding it open. From the outside. You wanted to control the network. Now you are the star of it." Halbrecht's image vanished. The hollow projector died. Justice, not revenge. The bridge doors exploded open. It was Chiron. In person. He was dragging Salith. He was bleeding from a wound on his head. The Darun had found him. "You," Chiron roared at Adrian. "You human filth, you have ruined everything." He threw Salith to the floor and raised his disruptor. Adrian moved. He dove for the console again. The Cathari made one. He clapped his hand. "Custodian," he bellowed, the word a force of pure command. "Command Royal Circuit invert all weapons." The dreadnought groaned. A shudder ran through the entire ship. Outside the view screen showed madness. The Black Spire's own spinal lance fired not at Earth, but sideways tearing off its own engine nacelle. The point defense turrets swiveled inward and began firing on the bridge itself. The ship was killing itself. In the chaos, Salith moved. She rolled, kicked Chiron's legs out from under him. Chiron screamed in rage. He saw it was over. He scrambled away, crawling to a captain's escape pod built into the floor. "If I cannot have the Empire," he spat, blood pouring from his mouth, "then no one can." He slammed his fist onto a red panel. "Self-destruct initiated. The core is yours. Custodian, enjoy it." The pod shot down into the ship. A new alarm. A final one. "Warning," the ship's voice screamed. "Quantum core overload in 90 seconds. "Adrian," Salith yelled, grabbing his arm. "We must leave now. The Vindicator is—" "I cannot!" Adrian gasped, holding the console, his arm shaking. "I am holding the guns down. If I let go, they will fire on Eos. Then we all die," Salith said, her voice cold. 80 seconds. A new sound. Not an alarm. Song. It was coming over the comm system. Mira. She had to be broadcasting it. It was Nick. It was not a cry. It was a tone. A note. A complex, impossible melody of pure math and light. It filled the bridge and it filled the ship. And the ship answered. Adrian felt it through the console. The core. The quantum cascade. It stopped. The song Nix was singing was a command. A lattice command. It was the off switch. The countdown timer froze. 10 seconds. 9 seconds. 8 seconds. And then nothing. The alarms died. The ship's engines died. The lights died. The Black Spire was dead. A hulk. A tomb. The only light on the bridge came from the view screen showing the beautiful, safe Earth. They returned to Eos Station on the Vindicator. They were not soldiers. They were not heroes. They were an engineer, a doctor, a drone, 2 rock monsters, and a baby in a box. But as they docked, they heard it. A sound, coming from every comm channel on the station, cheering. They stepped out into the docking bay. It was full. Engineers, medics, diplomats, soldiers, human, Cathari, Darun. They were all cheering. For them. Adrian saw Mira carrying Nix's crib herself. He saw Tarek. He saw Empress Salith walking beside him. Salith stopped. She looked at Nix. The baby was asleep, her pacer glowing softly. Suchalith thanked Adrian. But as she looked at the child, her face was not grateful. It was not relieved. I was shaken. It was a look of profound awe, of fear. It looked as if she was staring not at a baby, but at a ghost, a mirror. She knew something. A final secret. Custodian, she whispered, her voice hoarse. Your true work has only just begun. The days that followed the battle of the courtroom, as the media had dubbed it, were a blur of calculated chaos. The Black Spire, now a silent, powerless tomb, floating in high orbit, was a stark reminder of what had happened. It was a monument to the fall of the greatest and most corrupt corporation in Alliance history. The Alliance, galvanized by Adrian's broadcast, moved with a speed that was terrifying to its enemies. The data dump, the librarian's ledger, as the press called it, was irrefutable. It was not just an accusation. It was a 5-year-long, meticulously documented confession, signed by Halbrecht himself, and published from the bridge of his own flagship. The victory was not one of humanity, F-U-T-K-Y, in the classical explosive sense. It was a victory of humanity, F-U-K-K-Y. We keep receipts. It was a win built on data, on procedure, and on a stubborn, quiet engineer's refusal to let a lie stand. Admiral Tanaka, his judicial authority restored, delivered the Tri-Alliance verdict himself, broadcast to all 307 worlds of the Alliance. CEO Halbrecht, apprehended trying to flee the EOS system in a luxury yacht, was in Alliance custody, his assets frozen, his name synonymous with corporate evil. The obelisk directorate's stock did not just fall. It ceased to exist. It was delisted. It vanished, evaporating like a puddle in a plasma fire, taking tens of thousands of shell corporations and corrupt politicians with it. The network, built on shadows, could not survive the light. General Chiron, who had escaped in his pod, was now the most wanted man in the galaxy. His Pure Root faction, exposed as traitors, had nowhere to hide. The Cathari Empire, led by Captain Rhea Morgan, who had been granted a field promotion to admiral, was hunting its own, a grim, necessary cleansing. For Adrian Cole, the victory was quiet. He had not seen Halbrecht. He had refused the interviews. He had not watched the news. He had simply gone home. His apartment was no longer the small, gray, maintenance closet it had been. In the immediate aftermath, Ambassador Tarek had insisted on relocating him to a larger, secure, diplomatic suite, commensurate with the status of an imperial guardian, and frankly, a key witness. It was here, in this larger, brighter space, that the real work began. She is fading, Mira said, her voice tight with a fear that had nothing to do with dreadnoughts. It had been 3 days since the battle. Nyx was stable, but diminishing. The Crown Pacer was working, but it was like a temporary patch on a leaking reactor. The child's vitals were clean, but her energy signature, the thing that made her Nyx, was weak. The Pacer was a splint, Mira explained, her fingers flying over a medical scanner. She and Adrian were in the suite's new, built-in, sterile lab. It was designed to give her a pattern to follow, but she has no power source of her own. She is using her own life force to match the device. She is dying to fit the cure, Adrian said, the old, familiar coldness seeping back into his bones. No, I refuse. So do I, Mira said, her eyes hard. The Lorem Ipsum Pacer was a one-way broadcast. From the lattice to her. What she needs is a bridge. A two-way connection. She needs an anchor. A living one. She looked at him, at his chest. He understood. He undid the seals on his uniform. He pulled the gray fabric aside. In the days since the lattice had awoken in the courtroom, his tattoo had changed. It was no longer just ink. The lines were raised, sharp, intricate. They were no longer black. They were a deep, living blue. And they pulsed with a faint, soft light of their own, matching his heartbeat. It had spread, new lines weaving out from the center, forming a perfect, complete web that covered his sternum. It was no longer a mistake of his youth. It was a map of his soul. "The Empress called me an anchor," Adrian said, his voice hushed. "Let's make it official," Mira whispered. She had not been idle. She had fabricated a new device. It was similar to the pacer, but different. It was a simple, silver disc, warm to the touch, with a single, softly glowing crystal in the center. But there was a second piece, a small, silver sensor tethered by a fiber optic wire. "This," Mira said, her voice shaking slightly, "is the heart crown, half for her, half for you." She gently placed the main disc on Nyx's chest, over her tiny, thrumming heart. Then she looked at Adrian. "This may hurt." "It already does," he said. "Do it." Mira took the small sensor and pressed it directly onto the center of Adrian's tattoo. It was not cold. It was burning hot. He gasped, bracing himself against the table. It was not a physical pain. It was a feeling of immense pressure, as if a star was igniting in his chest. "Syncing biosignatures," Mira whispered, watching her monitor. "Lattice frequency detected. Custodian frequency detected. They are not matched. Stand by." She flipped a switch. Adrian roared. There was no sound of pain. It was the sound of release. He felt it. A lock in his chest that he had carried for 30 years shattered. Thrum thud, thrum thud. His heartbeat, her energy. They slammed together like two planets colliding, and then settled into one. Perfect by a single rhythm. On the monitor, Nyx's energy signature did not just stabilize, it bloomed. It exploded outward, a wave of pure golden light, filling the room's sensors. Nyx opened her eyes. She was no longer fading, she was shining. She looked at Mira, she looked at Adrian. And then she did something new. She lifted her tiny, malformed, vestigial fifth limb and waved it, purposefully. Adrian laughed, a raw, exhausted, joyful sound. He slid down the wall, his legs weak, his hand still pressed to his chest, where the sensor now stuck of its own accord. "Well," he gasped, looking at Mira, who was weeping openly. "I guess we are linked." Life found a new rhythm. A few weeks passed, the station began to heal. The alliance began to rebuild. And in the diplomatic suite, a family was forming. It was messy. It was chaotic. It was wonderful. "Sir, I must protest," Pip's voice chirped. The drone was hovering just out of reach of Nyx, who was now toddling. She was not toddling well, but she was toddling. She had found her own body. She used her 2 legs, her 2 primary arms for balance, and her 5th auxiliary limb as a perfectly placed 3rd leg, a tripod stabilizer. She looked like a tiny, drunken spider, and she was the most beautiful thing Adrian had ever seen. "She has coated my primary optic with microalgae paste again," Pip complained, trying in vain to wipe his eye, clean with a tiny utility arm. Nyx giggled a popping, bubbling sound and plopped down on her diaper. "She is diversifying your portfolio." "Pip," Adrian said, not looking up from his data slate. He was reading a report on advanced Cathari potty training. It was far more terrifying than the dreadnought schematics. "It is not funny, Adrian," Mira said, walking into the room with a towel. She wiped Pip clean. "He is a valuable member of this team." "See, Dr. Sato appreciates me," Pip said haughtily. "Of course I do," Mira said, handing Pip a new data chip. "Now, please, project the glowing light ball game for her. It is your turn to babysit. Pip groaned a long-suffering, electronic sound, but complied, projecting a swarm of holographic butterflies that Nyx immediately began trying to catch and eat. Mira sat next to Adrian on the sofa, leaning her head on his shoulder. He instinctively put his arm around her. It was a simple, worn-in gesture. "She called me Myra today," Mira whispered, watching the child play. "She called me Dada yesterday," Adrian whispered. "And then she bit my nose." Mira laughed softly. "A messy family indeed." "The best kind," he agreed. The peace was real, but it was not permanent. An invitation arrived, not on a data slate, but delivered by Admiral Rhea Morgan herself. It was a single, hand-carved piece of Cathari rootwood. The Empress Salith summoned Guardian Cole. He met her in a private meditation chamber that overlooked Earth. Salith was not wearing her imperial robes. She was in a simple, white shift. She looked less like an empress and more like a priestess. "Guardian Cole," she said, her voice soft. "Is she well? The heart crown holds." "She is perfect, Your Majesty." Adrian said. "Good," Salith nodded. "You have honored my choice. You have honored your humanity. You sought justice, not blood. You have passed the test." "It was not a test," Adrian said, his voice low. "It was my life, my family. For you, yes." Salith agreed, her golden eyes impossibly sad. "For me, it was a necessity." She turned to face him. "The heart crown is a marvel, a bridge, but it is not permanent. It binds you in this life, but the lattice is eternal. Nyx is eternal." "What are you asking, Your Majesty?" "I am inviting you," Salith said, "to the living crown rite. It is a ceremony not performed in 10,000 years. It will make your bond permanent. It will synchronize your very soul with the mother lattice. You will cease to be just Adrian Cole. You will be part of the crown. Forever." Adrian felt a chill. Become more than human. "Yes," Salith said. "It is the only way to truly protect her through all that is to come." He left the chamber, with the weight of eternity on his shoulders. He found himself in Ambassador Tarek's office. The Darun was vibrating with a joyful energy that made his crystal chimes ring. "Adrian, my friend," Tarek chimed. "You have done it. We have done it." "Done what?" Adrian asked, his mind still on Salith's offer. "The treaty. The hybrid court has ratified it. The Cole precedent. They are calling it, or perhaps the Guardian Doctrine. It is law. My friend across all Alliance worlds' sentiency is now defined by consciousness, not genetics. Family is defined by bond, not blood. Your case has changed the law for millions. Thousands of children, orphans, hybrids, they now have rights. It was a victory, a real, galaxy-spanning victory. The ripple effect of his simple, stubborn choice." "That is good news, Tarek," Adrian said, and he meant it. But as he walked back to his suite, the two realities warred in him. The galaxy was celebrating his humanity, his stubborn, human choice, and the Empress was asking him to give it up. "To become part of the crown," he muttered. He had just found his life. He had just found Mira. He had just found Nyx. He wanted to be a father, not a demigod. He wanted personal freedom, not multi-species responsibility. He entered his apartment. It was late. Mira was asleep in their bed. Pip was in his charging port. He walked to Nyx's crib. She was sleeping soundly, her tiny chest rising and falling. The heart crown pulsed with a soft, golden light. He stood watching her. His own tattoo pulsed in time. Thrum-thud, a pause, a long, silent pause. And then faintly, from afar, thrum-thud, a response. Adrian froze, his head snapped up. "Pip," he whispered. The drone's blue optic flashed in the darkness. "Sir, did you detect that? Detect what, sir? All station systems are nominal." Thrum thud. It was stronger this time. It was not a sound. It was a vibration, a resonance he felt in his bones. Across the station's deck. "Pip," Adrian said, his voice urgent. "Perform a deep subspace scan. Not the station. Outside, source it." "Sir," Pip said a moment later, his voice hushed. "That is impossible." "What is—" "I am detecting a tertiary heart-crown signal. A resonant lattice frequency. It is not Cathari. It is not human. It is ancient, billions of years old, and it is coming from Sector 000. Pip projected a globe of Earth into the dark room. A single, pulsing light was shining from deep within the planet's mantle, somewhere beneath the Andes. "A song," Adrian breathed. "A time song." Nyx stirred in her sleep. She did not wake, but she gurgled, a soft note of recognition. She hears it. The song in the child calls to the song in the bedrock. Salith. She was standing in the doorway of the nursery, cloaked in shadows. Her golden eyes were fixed on the child. "It is time, Guardian Cole," she whispered. She entered the room, her gaze finding him in the darkness. Her face was filled with that same profound, ancient sorrow. "When you can read the song in the bedrock," Selith said, her voice barely a breath, "the truth can no longer be hidden." The shuttle descended from the cold, clear orbit of Eos Station, a silver needle stitching a line from the future down to the ancient past. They fell from the sky, not as conquerors, but as pilgrims. They flew over the dark, sleeping continent of South America. Below them, the Andes Mountains were a jagged black scar against the star-dusted curve of the Earth. Adrian sat in the co-pilot's seat, his hands steady on his lap. He was not flying. No one was. The shuttle, an Imperial Cathari long-range transport, was flying itself, following a signal that was not on any human chart. Mira sat beside him, in the main cabin. She was not in her lab coat. She was in simple, functional, civilian clothes. She held Nyx, who was not in a crib, but on her lap, bundled in a soft, thermal blanket. The child was quiet. Her mismatched eyes, one gold, one milky blue staring, not at the cabin, but through the bulkhead, as if she could see the song they were following. Pip was nestled in a cargo hold. "Conserving power and processing the sheer existential terror of this entire endeavor," as he had put it. They were following the call, the thrum, thud from the bedrock. "This is not a Cathari outpost," Adrian said, his voice low, speaking to the figure who stood at the front of the cockpit, staring down at the approaching mountains. Empress Salith turned. She was robed in the same, simple, white shift she had worn in his quarters. "No, custodian," she said, her voice echoing the thrum of the engines. "This is the source." The shuttle did not land. It descended. A section of the mountain, a desolate, ice-covered peak at 15,000 feet, opened, not with doors. The rock pixelated into hard light, just as the bulkhead in Sector 9 had, revealing a dark, vertical shaft. The ship slid into the planet's crust, into the warm, waiting darkness. They were in the Crown Time Vault. It was not a vault. It was a cathedral, a vast, subterranean cavern, miles wide, lit by the same soft, pearlescent light of the Mother Lattice. But this was not the archive on Eos. This was the main server in the center of the cavern. A single, colossal structure rose. It was not a tree. It was a column, a pillar of living crystal, so large it seemed to be the axis upon which the world turned. It pulsed, not with light, but with sound. A low, slow tectonic heartbeat. Thrum-thud. The bedrock song. "This is not Cathari," Mira whispered, stepping out of the shuttle, holding Nyx close. The air was warm, clean, and vibrated. "No," Salith said. She walked towards the pillar. "This is older. It is the seed." The first song, "The lattice on Eos," is but an echo. This is the voice. They stood at the base of the pillar. It was a solid, sheer wall of crystal. "The living crown right," Adrian said. His voice hushed. He looked at Salith. "You said it would bind me?" "To the crown." "Yes," Salith said. "But first it must bind the crown to itself." She looked at Nyx. "The heart crown device you built." "Dr. Sato," Salith said, her golden eyes fixed on the child. "It is a key, a bridge, the final piece." She gestured to a small, raised dais at the pillar's base. "Place her there." Mira hesitated, her grip tightening on the child. "It is all right, Mira," Adrian said, his voice quiet. He felt it. The heart crown sensor on his own chest was thrumming, not with fear, but with anticipation, with recognition. She is not afraid. She wants to go. Nyx was reaching her tiny, five-limbed hand out towards the pillar. Mira kissed the child's head and gently placed her on the stone dais. The moment Nyx's body touched the dais, the sound stopped. The cavern plunged into an absolute, terrifying silence. And then it began. The heart crown device on Nyx's chest flared. The sensor on Adrian's chest burned ice cold. A single beam of golden light lanced out from Nyx, striking the pillar. The pillar answered. A wave of energy rolled out, not light, not sound, but time. Adrian saw it. He did not see it with his eyes. He saw it with his soul. He saw a line of energy extending from Nyx into the pillar. He saw it connect with an ancient, sleeping power. And he saw a second line. A line of pure, pearlescent light emerging from the pillar. It snaked through the air. It was not a line. It was a serpent. A loop. It arced through the cavern, ignoring him, ignoring Mira, and it struck the one person it was meant for. It hit Empress Salith. She gasped. Her body arched back, bathed in a light that was so bright it was black. "What is this?" Mira cried, running forward. "No, stay back," Adrian yelled, grabbing her arm. "This is the right. This is synchronization." "This is not a right," Mira shouted, her scientific mind reeling. "This is a paradox. Look at them." Adrian looked, and his mind broke, and then it reformed. He saw Nyx, the child, a tiny, glowing being, her mismatched eyes closed, her fifth limb twitching. She was the source, the output. And he saw Salith, the Empress, a tall, ancient, powerful being. She was the receiver, the input. The line of time flowed from Nyx into the pillar and into Salith. And then a new line formed. A line flowed from Salith, back to the pillar and into Nyx. It was a circuit, a closed loop. "She is not giving her power," Adrian breathed. The truth of it so vast it was crushing. She is receiving it, and Nyx is receiving it back. They are not two people. They are one. Salith's voice echoed in the room, but it was not her voice. It was a harmony, her voice, and a faint, bubbling giggle underneath. The light faded. Nyx was asleep on the dais, her heart crown pulsing softly. Salith was standing, her face etched with a profound weariness and a profound peace. "What are you?" Mira whispered, her voice shaking with awe and terror. Salith looked at Mira, her golden eyes filled with that impossible sorrow. "I am what she will become, Doctor. She turned to Adrian. And I am what she was, Salith said. Adrian stared. I do not understand. Nyx, Salith said, walking to the sleeping child and touching her cheek, is a child of immense power, the gateway, the key to uniting the species. In her time, in her future, she unites us. She brings 1,000 years of peace, but she is hunted, and she is lost. She looked at Adrian, her eyes boring into his. A war breaks out, a war of time itself. She is dying. Her only chance is to send a message, to stop it before it starts. But she cannot send a message, so she sends herself. She sent herself back in time, Adrian whispered. Yes, Salith said. A dying empress, an ancient being of light, poured her entire essence back into the only vessel that could hold it, a newborn child, herself. She sent herself back to be reborn in our time as a deformed, monstrous baby. Nyx. Adrian's mind reeled. You are Nyx, from the future. I am the Salith that Nyx will grow up to be, the Empress corrected, gently. I am the result of this timeline. The one who was sent back is gone, her essence now safe inside the child. A closed loop, Mira breathed, her hand at her throat. You grew up, became Empress Salith knowing all of this would happen. Knowing I had to make it happen, Salith said. I grew up remembering what I had to do. I had to find the one thing that could save me. The one thing that the lattice needed. The one person who could be the anchor. She looked at Adrian. Me, he said. But why a librarian? Because you are a custodian, Salith said, as if it were simple. Your tattoo. It is not ink. It is a birthmark, a gene mark. Your ancestors were the first humans, the ones who stood at this very pillar 100,000 years ago when the lattice first sang to humanity. Your gene line, your voice, is one of the few that can give the lattice a human command. My power. No, Salith interrupted, her voice fierce. Not your power. That is why. Halbrecht wanted your power. Chiron wanted your power. I did not choose you for your gene voice. Adrian Cole, that just made you eligible. I chose you for your humanity. I chose you because your cup was empty. Because you were broken by grief. Because you saw a monster, and your first instinct was not power, not purity, not assets. Your first instinct was, she is a child. She needs to be fed. She needs a lullaby. I chose you because you were the only one in the galaxy who would not try to use her. You would only love her. The truth of it hit Adrian like a physical blow. He was not chosen to be a savior. He was chosen because he had already chosen to love. My wife, he whispered, the word a painful ghost. Was not your fault, Salith said, her voice gentle. You have carried that grief like a shield, thinking if you had been there, if you had shouted louder, you could have stopped it. You could not have. It was a murder perpetrated by a monster. Your revenge was not in killing him. Your revenge was in exposing him. Your revenge was justice. That is the custodian's way, the human way. You honored her memory. Adrian, now forgive yourself. He closed his eyes. The cold, hard knot of rage and guilt he had carried for 5 years, the thing that had defined him, did not shatter. It just dissolved. It melted away, leaving not an empty cup, but a clean one. So this is it, he said, opening his eyes. The loop is closed. The rite is done. The loop is closed, Salith agreed. Now your choice begins. Will you accept the permanent bond? Will you become more than human to protect her? Adrian looked at Mira. He looked at the sleeping child. "No," he said, his voice clear. Salith smiled. "Good. That was the final test." "What?" "To become more than human is to lose the very thing that makes you her guardian," Salith said. "No, custodian. You will remain what you are. A father, a partner, a stubborn, glorious human. That is your power. That is what she needs." A comlink chimed. A mortal, mundane sound in the sacred cavern. It was Pip. His voice came from Adrian's wristcom. "Sir, my apologies for interrupting your transcendence, but we have a situation. I am detecting a rogue signal, trying to tap into the lattice archive up here on Eos. It is General Chiron. He is trying to hack the mother lattice." Salith did not flinch. "And so that loop closes as well." "Pip," Adrian said, his voice calm. "Do you remember the synchronization signal from the bridge, the one from Nyx and the Empress?" "Of course, sir, it is my new screensaver." "Good," Salith said, her voice now cold and imperial. "Feed that signal to Admiral Morgan's fleet. Give her Chiron's exact location. He is looking for the crown. Let the crown find him. At once, Your Majesty." Pip chirped. "The Traitor Finder protocol is engaged." Chiron was captured 20 minutes later. His ship surrounded, his console frozen by a song he could not understand. He would face a public alliance-wide trial. The librarian's ledger would have a second chapter. In the quiet of the Andean vault, Adrian turned to Mira. He did not have a ring. He did not have a plan. He just took her hand. "Mira," he said, "I am a messy, broken, middle-aged engineer who is now biologically linked to an alien princess who is also an empress from the future. I have no idea what I am doing." "Good," Mira said, her eyes shining with tears. "Neither do I. It is a perfect start." "So," he said, fumbling, "that family thing you mentioned on the dreadnought." "I accept," she said, laughing and crying. "I accept all of it." He leaned in and kissed her. A simple, human kiss at the base of a time-bending alien artifact. A small, popping giggle made them turn. Nyx was awake. She was sitting up on the dais. She clapped her two main hands together and then waved her tiny, vestigial fifth limb in the air, like a pen signing a document. "Well," Pip's voice came from Adrian's comm, "the witness has countersigned. I pronounce this biosocial contract legally binding. My congratulations, you illogical creatures." The alliance changed. The Guardian Doctrine became law. Ambassador Tarek oversaw the creation of a new body, the Guardian Council, a joint human Cathari-Darun committee to protect the rights of all children, of all species. Its first Regent Guardian, a transitional leader to guide its formation, Adrian Cole. He protested. He said he was just a librarian. Tarek chimed and said that was exactly why he was the only choice. The final scene was not in a courtroom or a vault. It was on a balcony on Eos Station, months later. The diplomatic suite was their home. Adrian was sitting in a chair, his feet up. He was reading a data slate. It was a report on fusion engine yields. He was still an engineer. Mira was reading a book, a real one, made of paper that smelled like dust and vanilla. Pip was projecting a soft, holographic galaxy on the ceiling, and Nyx was at the window. She was standing on her own 5 limbs, her tiny hands pressed against the transparasteel. Outside, the earth turned, blue and white marble of impossible beauty. She was not looking at it. She was listening. Her head was tilted. Her mismatched eyes were closed. She was listening to the song in bedrock, the ancient, patient thrum of the planet that had waited for her to come home. Thrum thud, and far away. In a place that was not a place. In a time that was not a time. A rift opened. An ancient Cathari empress, her face etched with the sorrow of a 1,000-year war that would now never happen, looked through the tears. She saw the child. She saw the engineer. She saw the doctor. She saw her past. She saw her present. She saw her future. And so Elith smiled. The loop was closed. The journey had begun. The future was not a battle to be won, but a family to be raised. A future not of conquest, but of healing.